You sense the chill settling in before your mind catches up. The daylight fades from the heavens, descending like a heavy cover, while the air bites at your cheeks, forcing your eyes to water. Survival here isn't guaranteed, certainly not easy, unless you've prepared with the kind of routines forged through countless unforgiving nights in a place indifferent to your comfort. As you press on without delay or ritual, straight into the gathering gloom, you find yourself in medieval England, right on the brink of darkness. No lights flicker on with a simple turn. No lanterns illuminate the path ahead. The shadows claim the world uninvited, an unyielding reality. The sun dips away, dragging the warmth with it, and your body starts its grim bargain with the frost. Shoulders hunch up tight. Fingers burrow into folds of fabric on instinct. This marks the day's deepest freeze, a truth everyone nearby accepts without question. A well-known piece of history takes root in your thoughts. In the centuries to come, medieval England would endure the Little Ice Age, but even earlier, its winters gripped harder and more erratically than anything folks today might know. Lacking padded walls, heated cores, or steady predictions of the weather, people braced for those icy evenings, mapped them out, and harbored a silent dread. Griping about the bite of winter changes nothing. Instead, you adjust. You head toward a humble shelter, squat and sturdy, its heavy barriers hunkered low against the gusts. Crossing the threshold, the odors assault you right away. Smoky haze, sodden timber, musty cloth. There's no real divide between the inside and the wild beyond. As you're accustomed to, the chill trails right behind you. It pools at your feet. It seeps in through unseen fissures. Shutting the entrance does little. The evening's grip extends inward. The blaze reveals itself through sound first, a faint, hesitant snap and sputter. Flames aren't for show in this era. They're no mere mood setter. They're life itself. The fireplace commands the room's heart, pulsing like a creature demanding vigilance. If it fades, peril thickens with the dark. If it flares unchecked, acrid fumes choke the air, stinging your sight and breath. Generations hone this delicate equilibrium through trial, hacking coughs, and fine-tuned shifts. One odd detail often catches contemporary ears off guard. In some medieval homes, folks held that particular woods kindled a fiercer glow, veering into near mystical notions. Oak earned steady faith. Ash commanded regard. Certain avoided elderwood, not for its weak flame, but due to old tales claiming it invited misfortune or ailment across the threshold. True or fanciful, such convictions guided what was stockpiled long before the frost set in. Drawn by nature, you edge nearer the flames. It's a universal pull. The warmth spreads patchily. One flank basks while the other shivers. Your features thaw as your spine stays iced, prompting a gradual pivot, much like a roast before the coals, though no one would voice it so crudely. Talk softens after dusk. The chill alters how noises travel. Even speech seems to ration itself. Scholars debate to this day if those from medieval times endured the cold more keenly than we might, or if their frames grew resilient through endless contact. A few argue for built-up endurance. Others cite accounts of frozen limbs, ailments, and seasonal fatalities to show it as an relentless burden. You sense that very tension in your frame as you linger, letting the heat seep slowly through. Evening rituals stir to life nearby. Implements get stowed. Livestock stir in adjacent pens or tucked alcoves. Indeed, they often bed down within or near enough for their radiating warmth to count. Their scents mingle in, their breaths rasp audible. It's no quaint scene, pure utility. Heat from any source serves. You observe the scant room between bodies. Solitude is a perk for milder times. In this chill, forms huddle close, pulled by mutual glow. Young ones press to elders. Grown folk rest against barriers, retaining hints of daylight's linger. No one sprawls loose. To hold the warmth, you coil tight. Beyond the walls, gales sweep the open fields, stripped bare of woods for crops in much of the land. They probe each crevice. They murmur low against the stone. From within, the hearth retorts. A spark, a rustle, a tumble of glowing remnants. Such is the rhythm of endurance. Another established historical note drifts into the space. Until more advanced eras, most medieval dwellings lacked proper vents. Haze vented via a roof aperture or just leaked through the building's seams. Thus, comfort and irritation entwined. You surrender fresh breaths gladly for the vital heat. You start to grasp that nighttime isn't meant for exertion. It's a test of fortitude. In winter, folks slumber deeper, not from sloth, but because any motion drained precious warmth. You settle in place, bide your time, and attune your ears. Hours elongate once daylight vanishes. There's a silent certainty that morning will arrive, yet it seems remote. For the moment, darkness envelops you entirely. Frost seeps from all directions, though you're not isolated in it. All around lie modest tactics, ingrained habits, subtle shifts that sustain life across such grueling seasons. With the flames finding an even cadence, the tale tightens, honing in on essentials. This initial evening isn't centered on ingenious hacks. Rather, it's about perception, acknowledging that chill isn't a foe to conquer, but a reality to inhabit. As your breaths grow measured and your frame inches nearer the fire, you sense how each medieval evening commenced identically, through resignation. You don't rouse to greater comfort. On the contrary, the chill bites keener now that you've ceased stirring. Evening fully descends, and the essence of cold sharpens with prolonged stillness. It's more than mere frigidity. It's a burden. It's endurance. It infiltrates gradually, not abruptly, first numbing fingertips, then toes, then hinges of limbs, until every joint registers acutely. You come to realize medieval folk viewed cold as multifaceted. There was the parched sort that split flesh and set timber creaking. There was the damp variety that penetrated woolen layers and lingered relentlessly. In England, both frequently mingled within one evening. Daytime drizzle could transform dusk's spite into a tenacious, almost sentient force, gripping tight and unyielding. A key aspect of historical record takes root here unobtrusively. Medieval England lacked uniform methods for gauging temperatures. No digits, no predictions. Chill was gauged by sensation. Accounts from the era depict winters as severe, harsh, ruthless, or unrelenting. Such terms carried weight. They signaled the degree of vigilance required, the stores of provisions to hoard, the duration fires ought to endure. You venture out momentarily, enough to immerse in the nocturnal chill. The earth feels rigid underfoot. Mud has solidified into grooves. Blades of grass yield a subtle crackle under weight. The heavens stretch vast and studded with stars, more vivid in winter than in milder months. Yet that sharpness exacts a toll. Unclouded skies typically herald frostier evenings. You lack the scientific rationale. But the rhythm is familiar. Noises alter in the frost. A far-off canine's yelp travels further. Breezes threading through leafless limbs produce a faint, ceaseless murmur. Even your own motions ring out more distinctly, as if the cold heightens every echo. You proceed with caution, instinctively preserving body heat. A peculiar notion echoes in subsequent accounts and folklore. Certain individuals thought the cold could infiltrate the frame and embed itself, sparking aches that persisted for seasons. They termed it a bone-deep chill. Contemporary healers might label it joint disease or lingering swelling, but the sensation mirrored the reality. Wintry evenings etched lasting impressions. You re-enter the shelter, thankful despite its flaws. The blaze has dimmed. Coals pulse like vigilant gazes. A hand prods them softly, mindful of igniting stray embers. Timber is scarce. You avoid squandering it for fleeting ease. Blazes are calibrated to endure, not to flare wildly. Scholars continue debating if medieval fare aided or hindered cold resistance compared to today's. Dense loaves, rich oils, and hearty broths supplied the fuel for inner warmth. Yet undernourishment plagued many, particularly in humble homes. You sense this strain in the space. Comfort hinges not just on the flames, but on the day's earlier meals. As darkness thickens, occupants reposition wordlessly. One edges nearer the fire, another angles to fend off a current of air. Capes draw snugger. Head coverings rise. Garments serve as bulwarks against the freeze, each stitch vital. You observe how obscurity alters conduct. No aimless striding, no excess motions. Vitality is rationed. Discourse ebbs not from tedium, but intuition. Speech parts the lips, squanders warmth, parches the voice. Quietude conserves. Yet another established historical detail weaves in subtly. Candles were scarce and costly. Render-based ones reeked and flickered erratically. Honeycomb variants were indulgences for the elite. Evenings unfolded mostly by hearth glow, with shadows dancing on surfaces as firelight wavered. Gloom isn't absolute, yet profound enough to instill wariness. You perch and heed the subtle noises of perseverance. A hack, the drag of a timber seat, the gentle sigh of one nearing slumber. Repose operates differently in this era. It fragments. Doze, rouse, doze once more. The evening endures, and your form recognizes it. Frost hones vigilance. You register the touch of cloth on flesh. You sense the coarse texture of wool against your body, the irritating rub of stitched edges. Gradually, you notice the spots where warmth slips away most quickly, your wrists, ankles, and neck. Instinctively, you pull coverings over these vulnerable areas, figuring out through touch alone what keeps the chill at bay and what fails. Another peculiar notion lingers in the medieval mindset. Many believed that the cold bore spirits or forces that could seep in via exposed flesh. That's why scarves and hoods served dual purposes, not just for utility, but as wards against the intangible. Protecting the head held particular importance after dark, when invisible entities were said to roam with greater ease. Your eyes flick to the door nearby, sturdy yet flawed. Drafts seep through it like a lingering sigh. Bits of cloth or straw have been crammed into the cracks around its edges, a makeshift barrier devised from practical watching rather than any grand design. Folks observed the paths of invading cold and sealed them off, bit by bit. Scholars today argue over the balance in medieval winter endurance. How much stemmed from deliberate tactics versus rote traditions passed down unquestioned? Were they aware of the reasons certain fixes succeeded? Or did they just follow what elders had shown them? In this huddled silence, it seems the truth blends both worlds. Wisdom resided as deeply in instinct as in intellect. The hours drag on. The flames flicker lower. A lone log is added with precision, position just right. Brief flares of sparks dance up before fading. The space heats a touch, enough to blunt the sharpness, but not to loosen your guard entirely. Vigilance lingers even as drowsiness weighs on your lids. The chill persists, ever present. It lurks, it bears down, yet you're starting to grasp its patterns. Enduring those ancient nights wasn't a battle to conquer the frost, but an art of molding existence to fit it. As darkness thickens and your breaths deepen, that realization eases in alongside you, calm and deliberate. You edge nearer the hearth, drawn by its pull. Every element in the room subtly revolves around it. The blaze isn't merely an element, it's the pulse that all else attunes to. Though gazes might wander elsewhere, its state registers with everyone, burning steadily, waning, snapping with too much vigor. Your ease hinges on those cues. The hearth hunkers low and exposed, unadorned. No metal guard, no neat stonework, just a basic slab where wood and coals smolder in irregular patches. Its heat strikes swiftly, yet sparingly. It touches your legs first, then your palms, then your cheeks. The rest of you still registers the frost hovering, biding its time. In medieval England, daily rhythms bent toward this central glow. As daylight waned, chores eased off. Tasks like weaving or repairing, ones that could hug the warmth, stretched into the evening. Whatever demanded distance from the fire got deferred to dawn, when feasible. This wasn't idleness, it was shrewd planning. Surviving documents drive home one truth: fuel was invaluable. Even amid plentiful woods, the labor of collecting, chopping, seasoning, and stockpiling it demanded serious toil. Where trees grew scarce, shortages hit hard, and some homes resorted to peat, dried manure, or scrub in place of timber. These alternatives burned variably, reeked distinctively, and heated inconsistently. You see the deliberate way wood is arranged, not flung or heaped carelessly. A gentle prod adjusts a chunk to draw in breeze, nurturing the blaze efficiently without excess. Mastering fire care was an unspoken craft, handed from parent to child through example. Kids observed for years before earning a turn. A subtler fact hides in old household ledgers. Certain groups smothered their fires overnight, heaping ashes to preserve the coals till daybreak. Preserving that spark spared massive work come sunrise. Starting afresh dragged on and proved unreliable, particularly in wet conditions. Letting it die out could escalate a frosty morning to outright peril. Smoke clings near the floor, rising sluggishly. It bites at your eyes if you linger too near for extended spells. Your throat parches, coughs echo often. Such irritations were woven into existence. Pure air wasn't a luxury they chased. Heat took precedence. Today's experts note that endless smoke inhalation probably bred lasting lung woes. Folks back then wouldn't have phrased it so clinically. They recognized it roughened the breath. They also grasped that freezing could end you. The decision boiled down to basics. You adjust your position a bit, turning to let the heat thaw stiffened spots. It's a shared ritual. No one holds still indefinitely. Shifts come gently, almost thoughtfully. Full extensions are rare. Bodies stay curled, hoarding gathered warmth. Over generations, a quirky notion clung to fireplaces. Blazes were deemed to possess tempers. A faltering one that wouldn't take might get pinned on misfortune, misconduct, or hidden meddlers. Some murmured near the hearth in the dark, as if noise could irk it. Symbolic or sensible, such customs sharpen focus. The hearth delineated social lines too. Visitors received the spots nearest the flames as a gesture of welcome. The elderly and young ones naturally claimed the prime positions. One standing was evident from how close they sat to the heat. This held true even during slumber. The sleeping arrangements right by the hearth were the most sought after in chilly weather. Such bedding was basic, frames of wood or bundles of straw spread on the ground. Yet location trumped any luxury. You sensed the heat gathering in uneven patches, intense within a limited circle, before dropping off sharply. Where you placed yourself could spell the line between restless chills and fitful rest. Scholars debate the frequency of all-night blazes in the hearth. Certain experts claim resource shortages rendered it uncommon, particularly for those with limited means. Counter-arguments hold that even modest, smoldering flames were sustained whenever feasible, given the perils frost brought to infants and seniors. Reality probably shifted with local prosperity, climate, and conditions. You perceive the space falling into deeper silence as the blaze dwindles to glowing coals. The pops and snaps ease, silhouettes hold steady, and chatter fades. Darkness advances not in sudden bursts, but through a subtle ebb of vitality. Forms ready themselves for sleep in phases that echo the flame's gentle fade. The scent sharpens now. Timber, fumes, soil, traces of the day's meal. These odors linger on fabrics and locks, tagging folks wherever they roamed. The fire's essence defined them as distinctly as dialects or garb. Watching the coals, a pragmatic insight dawns. Flames parch the atmosphere a touch, sharpening the bite of chill on bare flesh, yet rendering it more bearable in the main. Moisture-laden frost burrowed deep into the frame. Arid chill nipped at the edges without penetrating. Folks from that era sense this instinctively, without labels, and tune their fires to suit. An individual stands with caution to toss in one last bit of kindling, not a full branch, but something modest and measured, sufficient to bridge the blaze onward sans excess warmth or stray embers. Embers posed real threats. Roofs of reed and timber structures offered no mercy to oversight. Easing back into your spot, the heat softens yet persists, revealing the hearth's pivotal role in weathering those ancient evenings. It embodied heat, glow, safeguard, and cadence combined. Absent it, the home turned hollow. Present, it armed against the fiercest freeze. Your breaths grow even as the coals hold firm. A low murmur fills the chamber beyond. Frost lurks without, while the fire stands sentinel within. The coziness from the blaze invariably exacts a toll, one you're inhaling steadily. At this point, the haze no longer ascends neatly and dissipates. It wafts lazily. It twists. It hangs near the ground when the outer chill weighs down the breeze. Your vision waters mildly at first, then with greater urgency. If you linger too near or too late, you flutter your lids frequently, scarcely registering it, for all around share the habit. The overhead timbers whisper a subtle tale. They blacken almost fully. Layers of grime accumulate to blur outlines. Across seasons, even ages, the vapors coat the interior like a signature. Far from oversight, this signifies endurance. The dwelling has hosted enough heat to etch its presence. Chronicles of the time underscore a simple truth. Hazy interiors were everyday fare. inhabitants took it for granted. Grumbles over irritated gazes or raspy voices crop up now and then in writings and logs, yet pale beside the dread of frost. Heat took priority. Ease trailed only when feasible. You shift once more, tilting away from the thickest fog. Over time, one mapped where fumes gathered and where breaths flowed freer. Grown-ups of height might stoop or hunker down. The little ones stayed floor level, where the atmosphere proved somewhat purer, albeit cooler. Such shifts occurred silently. They came naturally from youth. Digging into relics from old dwellings yields an intriguing find. Certain ceilings bear soot trails, implying deliberate airflow control via vent tweaks or draped fabrics. Rudimentary methods, yet effective enough to count. Taming the haze wove into stewarding the heat. Your lungs constrict briefly, then relax. Hacking fits arise routinely, taken in stride. A hack doesn't halt talk or draw worry unless it escalates. Lingering rasps just weave into the season's fabric. You catch how throats are cleared with discretion, nearly courteously, as though excusing oneself to the space. Today's healers posit that chronic fume immersion probably cut years short or aggravated ailments. Those from medieval days wouldn't phrase it so. They grasped how vapors strain the lungs. They grasped, too, that sans flames, mere respiration might falter swiftly. The trade-off was stark, not abstract. In some countryside enclaves, an odd notion persisted that haze cleansed the breeze, warding off disease or ill omens. Blazes were nursed through sicknesses not solely for coziness, but from faith that fumes shielded the home. Regardless of its origins, that notion prompted folks to sustain the fire at all costs. You ease the irritation in your eyes by rubbing them softly, sensing the rough particles gathered there. In this hazy atmosphere, your eyes water without much prompting. The moisture helps rinse out some of the sharpness. You stay silent about it. No point in voicing gripes that only squander precious air and heat. Rather, you edge nearer to another occupant in the cramped space, where the atmosphere seems a touch less oppressive. Then another sensation registers, the pervasive odor. A subtle smokiness clings to absolutely everything, your garments, your locks, your very skin, and even the meals you consume. This aroma trails individuals to places of worship, bustling trade spots, and open farmlands. It grows so commonplace that its lack would unsettle you deeply. Fresh, untainted air might strike you as odd. Accounts from subsequent eras reveal that sense alone could pinpoint a person's home. Varied burning materials yield distinct aromas. Wood, peat, dung, each imparts a unique trace. Thus, odor evolved into a telltale sign of one's surroundings and routines, deeply embedded in personal essence. You tune into the hearth once more, observing how the haze intensifies whenever coals stir or fresh kindling gets tossed in. Fleeting sparks leap upward before vanishing. A vigilant eye remains on the blaze, ever mindful of maintaining equilibrium between the blaze's vitality and the risk of choking fumes. Overloading it douses the flames and saturates the chamber with more soot. Skimping on fuel allows precious heat to dissipate. For ages, experts have pondered if those in the Middle Ages grasped the perils of inhaling smoke or merely bore them stoically. Certain clues point to recognition. Homes got altered with vents tweaked and fires managed with precision. Yet risks were all a matters of degree. The annoyance of fumes paled against threats like starvation, biting chill, or rampant illness. You sense how darkness amplifies the heaviness that daylight dilutes. By day, entrances swing wide, letting drafts circulate. Come evening, all seals shut tight. Heat stays contained, yet so does the pall. The space now presses in denser, more laden. Each inhale demands a bit extra resolve. You adjust by drawing breaths more measured and superficial. The young ones navigate it with less fuss in their slumber, their respirations light and rapid. The aged hack harder, their rib cages laboring visibly. Such things are observed quietly, without comment. Growing old is just part of life. The season's harshness is too. No one entertains fantasies of flawless ease. One subtle custom, frequently ignored, emerges in this scene. Certain families positioned aromatic plants by the flames, not merely for meals, but to infuse the vapors. Tossing in sprigs of rosemary, juniper, or thyme onto the glowing coals could momentarily perfume the haze. The effect proved fleeting, yet it granted a brief respite, easing both body and spirit. Drowsiness overtakes you gradually, not from purity in the air, but from your form's instinct to hoard vitality. The fumes weigh down your lashes. The gentle heat relaxes sinews sufficiently to coax repose. The gathering hushes as others yield to the same lull. Academics still argue over smoke's role in shaping rest during that era. Did it foster deeper slumber by numbing perceptions, or disrupt it through aggravation to airways and sight? Findings remain inconclusive. From your spot, it strikes you as a blend of the two, varying night by night. You adjust once more, settling into a spot where heat and breathable space strike the best possible compromise. The blaze quiets anew. The haze eases a fraction. The dwelling creaks faintly as outdoor frosts shift. These noises comfort you. They signal the walls endure. Your respiration steadies into a steady cadence. Draw in, release, deliberate, and guarded. The darkness demands no luxury from you. It calls for resilience. And amid the entwining haze and glow, alongside your fellow dwellers, you meet that call. As true slumber nears, it dawns on you how scant the provisions for rest truly are. No plush cushion awaits. No hefty coverlet vows to fend off the cold. In its place lies a makeshift setup of whatever's at hand, offering bare adequacy and nothing beyond. You ease down onto a bed of bundled straw or a simple mat, hearing it whisper under your form. Straw gets selected not for its softness, but for how it captures pockets of air. That air serves as a buffer against the freeze. Newer stuffing outperforms the worn-out variety. Though refreshing, it demands real toil. Thus, many families stuck with compacted, grimy layers well past their prime. The lumpy surface registers right away. Your pelvis grinds against the base. Your upper back protests. You're merely angling for the least painful, most insulating pose. Surviving ledgers from those homes reveal a key truth. Sleep gear ranked among a clan's prized holdings. Rugs, throws, and woven fleeces crop up repeatedly in estates, meticulously noted and bequeathed. This stemmed not from mere affection, but from dire need. Nighttime insulation couldn't be patched together on a whim. You draw a woolen throw across your frame. It's dense and rough-textured, faintly abrasive, yet it retains body heat even when sodden. That's crucial in quarters where dampness lingers persistently. If linen underlayers are available, they're layered below. Linen chills on initial contact, startling even, but it draws sweat from the body, aiding endurance over time. In certain locales, a quieter tradition endured, warming sleep linens by the hearth prior to turning in, hanging coverings near enough to capture radiance without risk of charring. Once you settle into bed, that initial coziness fades quickly, yet those opening moments of heat can smooth the path to slumber. You observe that you don't extend your limbs completely. Such exposure would leave too much skin vulnerable to the chill. Rather, you draw into a gentle curve, with knees drawn up and shoulders hunched. This position isn't something anyone instructs. It's absorbed from countless prior frosty evenings. Your frame instinctively recalls what conserves warmth. One more observation strikes you. You retire in your daytime attire, not undressing into sleepwear, but retaining the tunics, hose, and cloaks from the day's activities, drawn snugly around you. Shedding those garments would squander the body heat that's hard to reclaim. Even footwear stays on at times, particularly for the young ones. Accounts from monastic archives and family ledgers indicate that headgear was commonly donned for the night. Caps, hoods, or wraps to prevent vital warmth from fleeing the scalp. Folks recognized that a bare head often brought on chill-induced aches and fitful tossing. Thus, shielding the head turned into a standard practice, grounded in experience rather than myth. Historians remain divided on the true efficacy of bedding from that era. Certain experts contend that straw-filled pallets and woolen covers provided greater thermal protection than modern assumptions allow. Conversely, some highlight that absent elevated frames or adequate base padding, warmth would drain swiftly into the earth below. Huddled low to the ground as you are, you sense there's merit in both views. The soil proves a persistent foe, sucking heat steadily downward. Timbered floors, too, can turn frigid past the witching hour. To combat this, folks piled on layers of reeds, straw, and worn fabrics under their resting spots. These would compact soon enough, yet each addition offered some buffer. An intriguing notion from old tales surfaces. Many believed that bedding too near the dirt summoned ailments, ferried by the frigid drafts. Whenever feasible, elevated sleeping platforms were favored, not merely for prestige, but for their supposed protective benefits against sickness. Elevation equated to added insulation, security, and reduced exposure to nocturnal gusts. You adjust your position once more, securing the coverlet beneath your chin before cinching it firmly over your shoulders. Even tiny openings count. A stray breeze along the collar can jolt you awake in an instant. You seal it off with cloth, honing the skill over time to enclose your heat. Slumber arrives in fits and starts. You hover on the edge, rouse briefly, or sink back in. The frost never quite relents, but it eases sufficiently to permit some repose. Your breaths deepen gradually, your limbs loosen a touch. Beyond the walls, the gusts persist in their subtle erosion. A subtle insight from period correspondence emerges. Sharing sleeping quarters wasn't solely for companionship. It amplified the blanket's power. A single coverlet spanning two forms retained heat more efficiently than separate ones for isolated sleepers. A lesson in natural laws, gleaned from harsh winters without need for formulas. Academics continue to quarrel over the actual duration of winter rest in those times. Extended darkness implies ample chances, but the biting cold, acrid fumes and unease probably shattered it into pieces. What holds firm is that repose was shallower, more adaptable, and keenly attuned to the environment. You tune into the ambient noises anew. The rustle of bedding as a companion stirs nearby, a soft clearing of a throat, the hearth's embers dying down. These aren't interruptions, they're comforts, signals that you're not solitary in the ordeal. Your toes ache with the deepest chill. You chafe them against each other beneath the fabric, coaxing a fleeting spark of friction-born warmth. It holds for a spell, then the freeze reclaims its territory. You yield to it. Resistance only drains your reserves. As your mind quiets, it dawns that the era's sleeping setups prioritized not plushness or indulgence, but forging a tenuous haven of heat amid adversity. They didn't conquer the winter, they bartered with it. In the end, weariness achieves what linens and wools fall short of. Your form yields, drifting into light dozes, enveloped in coarse wool, clad for tomorrow's labors. You recharge much as generations before, not in ease, but in bare adequacy. With the darkness thickening, it sinks in that isolation isn't the intent here. Heat is communal, exchanged soundlessly between forms, captured and recirculated through humble, effective means. Co-sleeping isn't rooted in closeness or ease by today's measures. It's raw necessity. You sense a figure near you, near enough for your arms to brush. A young one, maybe, or kin, or just another soul allotted the same pallet. Forms nestle with care, arranging to ensure air flows while maximizing thermal capture. No one sprawls. Limbs fold inward, joints flex. Space is precious. Ancient domestic logs and survivor tales reveal how widespread such communal arrangements were. Mattresses cost dearly, rooms cramped easily. Even modest homes crammed multiple occupants per bed. In humbler abodes, the whole group might huddle in one zone by the fire. Solitude was a luxury. Solidarity against the cold was not. You perceive how swiftly the pooled warmth alters the night's bite, tempering the once piercing edge where it met your flank into something milder. Another person's heat filters through the folds of wool and linen, faint, yet impossible to ignore. It doesn't bring ease, but it does chase away some of the chill. And that shift changes everything. Animals factor into this setup in manners that might shock today's views. A hound nestles by your feet, its respiration rhythmic and calm. In certain households, felines huddle against forms, lured equally by custom and coziness. Out in the countryside, farm beasts could be stabled right behind a flimsy partition, their collective body heat leaking through wood and soil. The odor hangs heavy, the racket sporadic, the thermal benefit indisputable, a nuance seldom highlighted in scholarly overviews of the era. Folks from medieval times frequently portrayed heat as a wandering force. It traveled between forms, from beasts to people, from flames to the ground beneath. Coexisting in tight quarters meant participating in that transfer. Solitary rest was chillier, more hazardous, and thus sidestepped whenever feasible. You pick up on the noises of collective slumber. Breaths mingle, a sigh escapes from somewhere, a form rustles before finding stillness once more. These noises don't grate, they comfort. Quietude would seem off-kilter, perhaps even threatening. Noise signals vitality. It confirms no one's drifted into the icy hush of death. Scholars today debate how individuals handled private space amid such setups. A few posit that perpetual proximity dulled any aversion to congestion. Others contend that unease and strain were everyday, but accepted nonetheless. Drifting in this semi-dozing state, you reckon there's truth to each side, varying by evening and companions. You tug at your covering, stretching it broader to encompass more than your own frame. Blankets shared among several were the norm. A thick woolen spread laid across a group retained warmth better than skimpy ones divided up. This lesson sinks in young and goes unchallenged through the years. Rare local records mention an odd custom during brutal frosts. Groups might reshuffle their sleeping arrangements to optimize insulation, tucking youngsters amid grown-ups or bunching the frailest in a tight knot. Such shifts occurred wordlessly, driven by gut feeling over any formal guidance. You sense the gradual rise in temperature, insufficient for full unwind, but potent enough to blunt the bite of frost. Tendons ease slightly, inhalations grow fuller, slumber arrives smoother when you're not battling the darkness in isolation. Yet intimacy carries its burdens too. Motions feel confined. Should someone stir awake and reposition, the ripple affects all at once. Repose turns into a collective cadence, shallow and prone to interruption. Still, fleeting alertness beats profound numbness from the freeze. Experts sometimes interpret communal bedding as a custom cemented by survival needs, though some counter that gripes about cramped quarters crop up now and then in diaries. Ease was a matter of perspective. Resilience, though, bound everyone. You observe the deliberate care taken to avoid jostling or elbowing. Even in drowsiness, folks safeguard the delicate equilibrium of shared heat. A stray appendage displaces warmth that's gone. A cover yanked too greedily leaves flesh open to gusts. Harmony unfolds sans words. The darkness persists. Beyond the walls, gusts scrape and nip, frost lurking with endless patience. Within, figures create a modest haven of temperature, scant to conquer the season but ample to outlast it. You sense your mind easing as the mutual heat performs its subtle labor. With drowsiness taking deeper hold, it dawns on you that nights in the Middle Ages weren't weathered in solitude. They were met in unity, side by side, exhalation mingling with exhalation. In that proximity, heat evolved into a collective essence, delicate, vital, and profoundly personal. Undressing fully for rest is an alien notion, one from a gentler tomorrow. In this world, attire isn't shed come bedtime. It's merely adjusted. Each layer retained serves as a modest shield against the relentless probe of chill. You register the heft of your garments as you compose yourself anew. A woolen shirt still encircling your chest, stockings drawn snug over limbs, a mantle creased and pulled near like added padding. The material carries hints of hearth and use. It chafes here and there. None of it signifies. The key is its capacity to conserve body heat. Surviving inventories from those days understatedly show how sparse wardrobes truly were for most. One sturdy shirt could see daily wear, mended over and over and bedded in nightly for seasons on end. Attire didn't pivot by season like now. You piled on whatever was at hand, no matter the calendar, tweaking bulk instead of swapping sets. You see how hems are yanked down to glove the hands, how necklines are hiked to shield the throat. Bare flesh seems perilous in this moment. The frost seizes it without mercy. Wrists, heels, nape. These spots get defended on reflex. Even in torpor, your frame guards them. Hats and wraps count for more than one might guess. Skullcaps, cowls, kerchiefs, whatever can shield the ears. They linger through the dark hours. Long experience taught that bared scalps meant chillier nights and throbbing dawns. Warming the head turned into routine rather than mere suggestion. Certain medieval drawings reveal a subtle yet significant trait. Folks in bed are typically depicted in their everyday attire, perhaps with belts slackened but still fastened. Those belts serve to hug the cloth against the skin, warding off chilly currents within the garments. Practicality trumps ease every time. You tweak your own wrappings, folding material under your form to block sneaky drafts. Mastering this requires time. Bind too snugly, and shifting feels awkward. Leave it too slack, and heat slips away. Finding that sweet spot comes gradually through countless evenings. A peculiar practice crops up in occasional home records. Individuals would drape an additional piece of clothing over the torso or belly for sleep. Not donned, merely positioned there. It provided pressure and insulation without hampering motion. A straightforward fix, stumbled upon intuitively. As your internal heat accumulates within the coverings, you sense a subtle relief in your stiff muscles. Wool captures pockets of air. That air then heats up. It's a gradual method, but one you can count on. Underneath, linen wicks moisture from the body, averting the chill of clammy fabric later on. These fabrics complement each other, regardless of any rationale behind it. Scholars still debate the true level of coziness this setup offered. Certain contemporary analysts envision perpetual discomfort. Yet others argue that those raised in such environs probably achieved a decent level of bearable heat. In your current spot, you're neither cozy nor suffering. You're simply held in check. Your footwear stays laced on. Leather offers no real warmth, yet it shields against floor drafts. At times, folks opt for padded footwear or added bindings. Feet chill fast, and rewarming them proves tough once they're icy. Covering them prioritizes utility over looks. You observe how activity winds down as everyone gears up for deeper slumber. The coverings settle in place. The rustle of cloth quiets. Each person seeks a stance that fosters heat retention without discomfort. You draw in a bit more, knees drawn up, shoulders hunched. The attire conforms, forming insulated voids. Later winter chronicles mention a habit where some intentionally secured their outfits pre-bed, pulling laces or fastenings to minimize circulation inside the layers. This had nothing to do with fashion. It was purely for outlasting those extended periods of immobility. Historians lack agreement on the frequency of refreshing or laundering nightwear during winter. Fetching and using water meant braving the frost, a hazardous chore. Most probably wore the identical outfits for days or even weeks. Embracing the odor and rigidity as winter's norm. Against your skin, the material gradually heats. The irritation softens as your senses numb. Your breaths grow even. The garments fade from awareness, blending with the haze of hearth smoke, bedding rushes, and collective body heat. A hidden perk of bedding clothed emerges when a nearby rustle occurs. Should you have to jump up abruptly to stoke the flames, comfort a little one, or check an odd sound, you're set. No frantic fumbling for coverings, no initial shivers. Preparedness weaves right into downtime in the wild outdoors. The darkness persists within this modest haven of heat, forged by human forms, flickering fire, and woven barriers, delicate yet holding firm. You're enveloped in every wearable item you possess to last until daybreak. As drowsiness nears, it dawns on you that attire from that era went beyond mere looks. It was portable protection draped on your frame. And during evenings like this, with frost bearing down most fiercely, that protection separates mere grit from actual repose. Your mind might ease, the wrappings endure. The chill lurks, and you slip toward slumber, outfitted for the dark and the harsh morning light. The evening now hums with its own rhythm, and once attuned, it's impossible to tune it out. Frost mutes things, yet the season amplifies others, extending sounds, thinning them out, honing their bite. You remain motionless and tune in, since paying attention takes far less effort than stirring. The gale dominates the audio landscape. It skims the structure's sides, probing joints and angles, murmuring past the straw and rag-packed crevices. At intervals it surges, clattering against window covers or scraping the roofing with an arid, uneasy touch. In quieter moments, it drops to a hush you nearly overlook. Every shift tugs you toward alertness. Timber speaks its piece in the chill. Supports groan with falling mercury. Ceiling struts adjust. Planks underfoot murmur softly from the strain. These are known tones, almost soothing. They signal the dwelling adapting, not crumbling. A total hush would unsettle more. You pick up on creatures well ahead of spotting them. A steed readjusting in its pen close by. A bovine drawing long nasal breaths. A hound exhaling as it tucks in closer to the heat. These merge into the ambient drone, reliable and anchoring. Nocturnal farm critter chatter comforted folks, confirming all's well. Old village tales indicate that abrupt quiet from beasts warranted attention. It might hint at a prowler, sickness, or unwanted visitor. Come winter eves, with darkness descending swift, audition trumped vision. You tune in by instinct rather than dread. Nearby rustlings catch your ear as well. A throat clears somewhere close. Bedding shifts with a sleeper's roll. A young voice mumbles for a moment before quieting down. Such subtle cues affirm that others are there. They ground you within the space, united in enduring the darkness. Historians sometimes miss a key aspect of daily life back then. Nights seldom fell into total hush. Lacking today's barriers against noise, sounds traveled unchecked via flimsy partitions and exposed beams. You pick up on folks next door stirring, hacking coughs, or stoking their own flames. After sunset, the whole settlement pulses as one. A soft pop from the fire breaks the quiet now and then. Coals settle with a hush. Loose soot tumbles. Instinctively, you gauge each tiny cue. Is the blaze contained? Is it dimming too fast? Must it be fed? Even in drowsiness, a sliver of vigilance lingers. Chroniclers from later eras noted how winter amplified noises, claiming chill air honed the senses. Though not backed by science, their insight rang true. Folks grew adept at sorting seasonal clamor from the unusual. Scholars still debate the impact of perpetual din on rest in those times. Certain experts claim adaptation made disruption fade into the background for sound sleepers. Counter-arguments point to fragmented, lighter slumbers emerging from such breaks in routine. As you float between wakefulness and dreams, both realities blend within you. Far off outdoors, a stir echoes faintly. Perhaps a vulpine prowler or a human treading iced earth. Steps crunch sharper in the frost, more purposeful. Yet you remain prone, attending until the echo dies or clarifies. Within these walls, breaths set the prevailing cadence. Various lungs draw and release at uneven intervals, weaving a gentle, irregular harmony. Strangely, it calms. Unconsciously, you sync your own respiration to the flow, easing into collective rhythm. Folklore in certain regions held that nocturnal audio held omens. Howling gales foretold bitter storms. Sharp snaps in timber heralded intensifying freeze. Taken at face value or not, such notions sharpen focus on surroundings. You sense how obscurity elevates auditory cues. Devoid of vision. Hearing charts the layout solely by echo. Flames crackle over there. Respiration fills the space. Beasts stir past the barrier. Gusts weave through all. The bite of frost heightens this perception. Noises seem nearer, more intimate. It prevents total surrender to slumber. Rather, you skim the surface of rest, poised for any shift. In time, routine blunts the edge of watchfulness. Patterns recur. Gale through timber. Inhalations blaze. No fresh threats arise. Your form yields to the cycle, slackening its hold on awareness. As drowsiness reclaims you, it dawns that those long evenings weren't grim struggles solely with chill. They unfolded as extended vigils, where echoes verified security, signaled peril, and wove proof of ongoing existence through the void. Bundled tight amid known murmurs, you allow them to guide you onward into profounder repose as the season's whisper persists outside. Nocturnal appetite shifts in the winter cold. It's less an urgent pang demanding swift relief, more a profound languid tug, underscoring that warmth arises not just from flames, it emanates from within as well. Dwellings in that era's England accounted for this implicitly, in design if not in words. Hearty meals endured, loaves heavy with milled grains, stews simmered from legumes, pulses, or oats until they melded into sustaining heat. Rendered fats, scarce as they were, held value beyond taste for their endurance. You sense their subtle toil as you rest motionless. Ledgers from rural and urban homes reveal gradual changes in fare come colder months. Tender leaves vanished. Cured provisions dominated. Brined flesh. Desiccated seafood. Aged dairy. Dull, perhaps, yet they smoldered gradually inside, sustaining vigor through the hours of dark. Skimping on bedtime fuel during frost would have seemed folly, barring necessity. You recall the subtle glow spreading post-meal earlier, modest, yet felt. That inner heat endures, not fled, but drawn deep to nourish sinew and vitals, arming against the encroaching freeze. Absent it, repose would shorten. Tremors lengthen. Records capture a modest routine in some domestic tales, reserving a morsel for twilight, be it mere crust soaked in stock. No luxury this, pure calculation. Facing the dark, empty-stomached amplified the night's length and bite. Beverages contributed warmth too, absent the imports of tea or brew from afar, but mild local ale, warmed gently for dual comfort of fluid and fuel. You recall the lingering glow of that warmth deep in your torso. A few historical accounts hint at an intriguing notion. Certain foods were believed to generate greater bodily heat than others. Items like onions, garlic, and spices often got the credit for heating up the bloodstream, regardless of whether this was a true physiological response or just a mental boost. Such ingredients showed up frequently in winter dishes whenever they could be obtained. Contemporary experts still debate the extent of medieval folks' practical grasp on nutrition. Without any grasp of biochemistry, they nonetheless paid keen attention to patterns of cause and outcome. Filling meals helped endure the evenings. Omitting them intensified the chill. Such insight sufficed. You adjust your position a bit, sensing your belly calming down. The very process of breaking down food creates warmth. It's faint, yet in a chilly home, any bit of heat makes a difference. That's precisely why gorging before sleep wasn't frowned upon in winter, unlike in eras to come. Prioritizing relaxed digestion wasn't the aim. Staying toasty and alive was. Traces of cooking aromas hang subtly in the atmosphere. Roasted grains, wood smoke, rendered fats. They blend with the scents of wool and bedding straw, fostering a thick, anchoring ambiance. It underscores the labor invested earlier to brace for this evening. Certain records describe folks rousing midway through the night for another bite, particularly in brutal frosts. A hunk of bread, a swallow of ale. This broken slumber let the body replenish fuel when the heat waned dangerously. No one viewed it as odd. It was just adaptive existence. Scholars differ on its prevalence. Some view it as uncommon, linked to scarcity or sickness. Others propose it was routine in harsh seasons. Reclining here in a drowsy haze, you grasp its potential value. Your frame seems weightier now, anchored by nourishment and coverings. The shivers haven't kicked in yet. That's victory enough. You attune to the steady cadence of your breaths, allowing the digestion and heat to collaborate in their understated manner. Beyond the walls, the freeze persists unaltered. Within, equilibrium persists momentarily. Flames, garments, fellow sleepers, and sustenance weave a delicate network. Disrupt one element, and the gloomy darkness grows tougher. As drowsiness intensifies once more, it dawns on you that enduring the Middle Ages hinged not on one fix. It formed a tapestry of minor choices enacted day after day. Your intake counted as vitally as your resting spot. Heat was anticipated well ahead, methodically sustained into the blackness. Your mind wanders languidly and fully. The evening extends, yet you're equipped. With that reliable core glow still pulsing faintly, you surrender to repose anew, confident the earlier shared meal will propel you nearer to dawn. The beverage heats you swiftly, though its effect fades before long. You sense it radiating across your torso and extremities in a gentle surge, easing tensions and blunting the bite of frost. For several moments, perhaps extended, nursing it gradually renders the night less harsh. Gradually the coziness fades, retreating as soundlessly as it came. Ale features in virtually every winter dusk, not the potent variety one might picture, but mild small beer, crafted light for regular consumption. Potable water proves scarce, above all in settlements, and brewing renders ale more trustworthy. Plus, it delivers essential energy, outweighing flavor in these times. You partake not to banish the chill, but to cope with it. Folks would sometimes toast their ale by the fire, minding it didn't overheat. The mug warms your palms initially, then the glow travels to your gullet, your gut. It's a straightforward, instant solace. Estate ledgers and in-rules reveal its ubiquity. Ale quotas surface next to loaf allotments in various locales. Far from indulgence, it was sustenance. Even youngsters had watered-down portions, particularly in the cold months. You spot a peculiar irony right away. The brew induces a sense of added warmth, yet it heightens later susceptibility to the elements. The alcohol dilates surface capillaries, drawing heat outward but accelerating its loss. They ignored the science but recognized the cycle. Overindulge, and the frost rebounds fiercer. This awareness manifests in habits. Ale gets savored in sips, not gulped. It's paired with eats. It trims the discomfort without supplanting other safeguards. Inebriation during winter spells peril. Dimmed senses equate to squandered warmth. A quirky caution crops up in certain later cold-season homilies. Worshippers were cautioned against depending on booze for overnight heat, lest it invite profound numbness and ailment. Everyday wisdom cloaked in ethical phrasing, as was typical. Mead and wine factor in too, albeit rarer for the average sort. Mead offers a richer, denser heat. Wine gets thinned and costs a fortune. Each fulfills the core role: momentary ease, communal custom, a respite amid the protracted icy twilight. Today's analysts remain divided on alcohol's true role in helping weather wintry nights. Certain experts propose that the mental solace from the beverage was just as vital as its bodily impact. Some contend that the hazards surpassed any advantages. As you sit there, sensing the heat dissipate, it's clear why restraint turned into a routine. You place the cup down gently, avoiding any spills. Puddles on the ground would cool the room further and create slippery hazards. In winter, every action requires vigilance. Even minor errors have lasting consequences. The lingering glow from the sip relaxes your limbs softly. That's beneficial. Strain drains your strength. Easing up preserves it. You shift your posture once more, allowing yourself to sink into the piled coverings and collective body heat. The aroma of ale blends with the haze of smoke and the mustiness of wool. It's a comforting fragrance linked to twilight and repose. Inns provide greater coziness, yet a dwelling grants an irreplaceable haven that endures the full dark hours. The hearth demands watchful oversight. Trusted companions remain near. Certain records note folks stirring with greater thirst on frosty evenings. The blaze's arid breath draws out humidity. That's why ale and water stay within reach. A quick rise to sip beats rousing with parched lips and fidgety restlessness. Scholars still dispute the extent to which winter imbibing influenced communal bonds. Did it foster gatherings or simply tag along with established patterns? The response probably varied by location and situation. Within the hush of your abode, the beverage seems more utilitarian than sociable. Now, drowsiness weighs upon you more deeply. The fleeting heat has fulfilled its role, not through persistence, but by guiding you toward slumber. The darkness stays frigid and unaltered. Yet you're facing it with allies and readiness. As your breaths deepen steadily, you embrace the drink as a modest aid, a transient solace, another strand in the delicate weave sustaining you through the endless vigil. The vessel grows chill. The flames flicker faintly, and you slip into slumber once more, aware that comfort in this place is always fleeting, tended in fleeting instances until daybreak. The hearth burns lower, more echo than blaze, drawing your focus repeatedly. Nurturing it overnight is a silent duty divided among you, though never entirely relinquished. You avoid a roaring inferno. Endurance matters. A steady burn that holds till sunrise without alarming the household. A figure stirs cautiously, advancing deliberately to preserve the delicate equilibrium of heat and quiet. The faint rustle of logs reaches you, followed by the whisper of stirred cinders. The coals flare briefly, like awakening gazes. Before dimming again, the atmosphere shifts subtly, growing a touch hotter, more parched, yet smoky as ever. Traditional lore, shared by word of mouth, deemed this expertise indispensable. A mismanaged blaze would gutter out by dawn. An overfed one might surge uncontrollably, scattering embers that ignited reeds or seasoned beams. Harsh winter shadows pardon no blunders. Tending the fire was taught early, honed over time, and often honored in silence. You observe the shift in fuel at this late hour, No hefty branches now, they consume too quickly. Opt instead for slimmer bits or substances that glow without leaping. Peat, if on hand, proved ideal for this. It smoldered evenly and reliably, albeit with a dense odor. Charcoal, less common in households, delivered enduring warmth but demanded effort and expense to produce. One practice recurs in various local traditions. Certain kin would shroud the coals in ash prior to bed, trapping the glow and curbing the burn. At first light, they'd sweep it clear and revive the hearth. This basic ritual conserved effort, resources, and spared chilled hands from the biting morn. You ponder the peril of the fire extinguishing entirely. The day would dawn icier. Restarting it would call for flint, kindling, and forbearance. In soggy climes, it could prove impossible. The hearth's demise stripped the home's heart for precious time. No one risked that cavalierly. Lying there, you realize even rest stays vigilant in part. The ember's subtle snap lingers in your awareness. An abrupt burst or tumble would rouse a sleeper at once. Safeguarding the flames isn't mere protocol, it's ingrained reflex. A few preserved tales recount modest blazes in iron or clay holders, portable nearer to beds. These posed perils, but dire frost tipped the scales. Proximity to the form could spell ease over torment. Experts differ on the prevalence of such mobile warmers. Some deem them uncommon and perilous. Others cite traces of their application in particular locales or occupations. Undeniably, folks innovated relentlessly, tailoring methods to the rigors. You detect the hearth's evolving scent as it burrows into glowing remnants. Smoke thins, yielding to a parched, earthy tang. Ash carries a gentler aroma than crackling timber. The space hushes as the fire's murmur fades. You tug your cover closer by reflex, countering the minor chill. Others follow suit. A subtle stir passes through the dozing cluster as forms reposition, huddling to pool their heat with intent. A subtler custom appears in certain accounts of winter nights. Folks would position warm stones close to where they slept, wrapped in fabric to avoid injury. These stones retained their heat for quite some time. They lost it gradually, delivering a soft, consistent warmth right through the deepest chill. The danger was plain enough. Overly hot ones might burn cloth or flesh. Those that were barely warm served no purpose. Figuring out the right balance relied on trial and error, not any formal guidance. Survivors who mastered it shared the knowledge with caution. The darkness outside intensifies now. The frost probably bites even harder right before daybreak. Within these walls, the flames flicker faintly, like a murmur left unsaid. You rely on them out of necessity. Your breaths ease once more. The dwelling quiets around you. The glow, the coverings, and the closeness of others create a modest barrier against the endless freeze encroaching from all directions. As drowsiness reclaims you, it dawns that sustaining the hearth was more than routine work. It embodied hope for the dawn, a conviction that tenderness, however delicate, could endure the bleakest stretches if nurtured with care. And with that, you surrender to rest, counting on the glowing coals, the soot, and watchful tending to watch over the hours until sunlight breaks through. The scent reaches you before your mind quite catches it. Rich, grounded, vital. Creatures join you in the vigil, welcome or otherwise. Come winter, what once seemed a bother turns into an asset. Warmth is warmth, after all, and living forms release it without reserve. Right outside the partition, a bovine lets out a languid puff with every respiration, forming a haze you can nearly sense. The barrier is sturdy, yet flawed. Heat trickles across it, faint yet tangible. In humbler homes, the beasts were nearer yet. A nanny goat lashed by the entrance. Hens perched above. A swine dozing in the nook. Far from disorder, this was deliberate order. Evidence from countryside homes, unearthed in documents and digs, shows how routine it became. Structures housing both kin and stock under one roof crop up repeatedly in the archives. Folks occupied one section, the livestock the next. Just one divider stood between. It served dual roles, trapping heat while defining areas. You scrunch your face at the odor. It's potent, mingled with hay scents and beastly exhalations, yet scents dull with habit. The bite of cold never does. Households soon discerned which irritation truly counted. The creatures, too, grasped the setup. They hunkered down as dusk fell, hoarding strength much like you. Their forms emitted steady heat effortlessly. Equines stirred now and then. Bovines drew long inhales. Ovine clustered close, their fleeces dense and shielding. A curious tactic emerges in a handful of home records. In the harshest frosts, tinier beasts might be drawn nearer to rest areas. Hounds invited to nestle by toes. Felines slipping beneath quilts. Their company was valued, not rebuked. Scholars debate just how prevalent this was. A few records claim it suited only the neediest. Others note that even prosperous farmsteads prized the beast's output in brutal seasons. Undeniable, though, is how lines blurred when life hung in the balance. You tune into the beast's noises now, measured and even. They merge with folks' respirations, the hearth's remnants, and the gusts. The evening seems richer, less void. These rhythms comfort you. Beasts alert, yet serene signal no prowler nearby. A poignant note arises in cold season tales. Dwellings struck colder when stock vanished or ailed. Their contribution registered keenly. Losing them in frost wasn't merely a financial hit. It chilled the space and the spirit down to the core. You shift a bit, drawing the cover snug as a breeze sneaks past the divider. Straw plugs the crack, though seals aren't flawless. The creature's output eases such shortcomings. It warms the spots the blaze misses. Today's audiences might shudder at bunking with farm stock. Back then, it wasn't seen so. Beasts wove into the family's livelihood and routines. Housing them nearby shielded against thieves, hunters, and the freeze, while aiding people too. Experts still puzzle over sanitation in those mingled quarters. Ground cover of thatch and reeds got refreshed when required. Odors were endured. Sickness loomed, sure, but the chill demanded quicker action. Priorities followed suit. You observe how the stock slumbers soundly, untouched by the freeze as people aren't. Their natural padding excels. Fur, skin, layers of fat. People tapped into it simply by nearness, not invention. As the darkness lingers, the communal area strikes an even keel. Needs of man and beast align. Heat flows gently, soundlessly. The home turns into one unified entity, inhaling as one against the icy siege. Your mind eases anew as weariness mounts. The beast's murmurs weave into your slumber, reliable and anchoring. The heat from them seeps softly through partitions and planks, slipping by undetected until absence reveals it. Here, in this setup, mere existence turns into a shared endeavor, linking not only humans but creatures too. With the freeze clamping down beyond the walls, you settle within a shelter heated by flames, woven coverings, flesh, and the unobtrusive companionship of beasts sharing the vigil through darkness. At this point, the chill no longer startles. It has woven itself into your frame, claiming its routine spots and establishing residence. Digits go rigid at first, followed by feet. Then comes the turn of limbs, particularly those knees and hips strained from the day's labors, now chafing at the immobility. You sense it as a muted throb, more a nudge than a threat. Folks in medieval England described the frost as an entity that dwelled within, infiltrating the skeleton, embedding in the spine, and dragging steps heavier come dawn. To them, this held no poetic flourish, just keen insight. Such evenings etched traces you bore into daylight hours. You ease into a subtle stretch, cautious not to bear too much flesh, stirring aids, yet sparingly. Excess scatters the gathered heat. Scant motion lets rigidity burrow deeper. Instinct from trials guides you to that balance, adjusting precisely to sustain flow in your veins. Ancient health texts of the airy pinned chill as a disruptor of harmony. Excess frost was thought to congeal inner humors, hinder blood's rhythm, and summon sickness. Remedies aim to reclaim heat via nourishment, blaze, and repose. Though the phrasing varied, the raw experience mirrors your current one. Beneath the cover, you clasp your palms, creating rub to summon life back to chilled tips that have lost feeling. It revives for a spell, only for the frost to reclaim ground. This push-pull endures through the hours, wearying, yet routine. A quirky custom crops up in scattered domestic records. Some would nestle palms into the arm's bend or against the torso for insulation during slumber. Mittens weren't typical for bed. Flesh served in place of cloth. Feet proved trickiest to safeguard, and once seized by cold, they defy revival. You clamp them firm, then pull nearer to your core. A companion mirrors the action. Mutual heat lends aid, though limited. Icy ground draws vitality downward without mercy. Scholars today debate the extent of suffering folks just took as commonplace. Ongoing twinges, rigidity, and deadened senses weave through accounts of routine. Wintry evenings, no doubt, amplified them all. Yet mindset molds how it registers. What one braces to weather hits unlike what one seeks to evade. You observe the shift in respiration amid the bite. Short, measured, full inhales squander heat too fast. Such knowledge came instinctively, saw guidance. Even in doze, breaths remain guarded. A peculiar notion emerges in ensuing tales. Certain claimed reclining on specific flanks eased frost-induced throbs. Some vowed aligning the backbone toward the fire, however remote. These notions lingered as they occasionally delivered. The blaze offers scant heat anymore, mainly an aura. Its radiance has dimmed, yielding to a subtle shimmer under cinders. The space weighs denser. Frost sinks earthward, hugging shins and heels. Sleepers on elevated platforms fare a touch superior. Chronicles from grander homes indicate lofted frames were treasured come winter, beyond prestige, for the coziness. Height counted, frost plummeted, heat lingered aloft. Mere handspans could alter the night's toll. You sense the twinge in your lumbar soften a fraction as your form recalibrates. Sinews loosen, clench, then yield anew. Slumber stays light, arriving in surges. You navigate them as they arise. No sharp line divides standard seasonal unease from genuine ailment in surviving tales. Raised temperature, unrelenting throbs, and frailty sparked worry. Everyday frost pangs did not. They belong to the cycle, born in silence. You hear the rhythms nearby, halting, ragged. Fellow dwellers share the tautness, the muted freeze. None voices gripe, utterances alter not, forms adjust in quietude. As midnight nears its nadir pre-dawn, the grip tightens fiercest, limbs resist, digits flex shut. You nestle them further, relying on wrappings and collective heat to bridge the gap. At length, fatigue blunts the sharpness of feeling. Throbs recede to murmur. Frost turns constant companion. Not aggressor, you repose not from comfort, but from your frame's honed patience. Thus you remain, taut yet inhaling, iced yet persisting, aware this state passes. Daybreak nears, motion revives. Till then, your flesh enacts what era's forms mastered. It clings. Young ones huddle nearest the heat above all. You spot it right away. They're bundled snug, sighted with intent where blaze pools steadfast. Beside the fire, nestled among grown-ups and bundled in what feels like too many coverings, until you recall how fast heat flees from tiny frames. A child's soft, rapid breaths cut through the slumbering silence, distinct from the deeper rhythms of those around. Little lungs chill sooner than bigger ones. No one voices it, but everyone understands. Such arrangements were a silent, everyday wisdom handed down through families for ages. The tiniest ones claimed the coziest nooks, where heat held steady no matter what. In packed quarters, folks shuffled positions each evening to shield the kids. Sleep for the young wasn't just repose. It was a vigil against the chill. Observe the way garments get fixed just for them. Extra folds tugged high, arms snug in sleeves, hats fastened tight over ears, one more blanket draped beyond what's strictly needed. Bare skin on a child was a rare sight, even for moments. If a little one rolled and uncovered, someone stirred to reposition the covers without fully rousing. Entries in perisher records reveal the stakes behind this diligence. In winter, deaths peaked among infants and elders. Frosty evenings sapped strength from those already prone to temperature swings. Safeguarding the young through the dark hours was a wordless imperative rooted in hard-earned awareness, even without grasping the exact why. You sense the grown-ups' light vigilance, even as they doze, whenever kids are close. A faint cry rouses a parent in an instant. A hack prompts fingers to a brow, gauging heat with a palm. Such tending unfolds on autopilot, woven into routine without full consciousness. Certain family ledgers mention a peculiar custom. Babies occasionally swaddled and set in low baskets or rockers by the flames, sparing them the floor's bite while staying within arm's reach of sleepers. It prioritized endurance over ease. Historians debate the success of these tactics. A few argue that chills still felled many young ones, precautions notwithstanding. Others contend such ploys spared lives that might have slipped away. Reality likely balanced diligence with doubt. Nearby, a kid rustles briefly before easing back as a nearby adult eases over, stanching a breeze with their form. These tweaks occur endlessly through the hours, fading from recall by dawn. Heat endures via endless minor fixes. For the young, shadows at night heighten the bite of frost. Frost heightens dread. Grown-ups grasp this, drawing children near not solely for body heat, but for solace too. Steady breaths in earshot, a palm at hand, a coverlet in common, these count. A quaint belief emerges in spots. Some thought nocturnal drafts bore sickness that slipped in via open mouths in sleep. Loose wraps or fabrics hung by the head, not smothering, but warding off unseen threats in spirit. Practical or not, the aim was defense. The space molds itself to this tending. Kids at the heart, elders encircling. Heat flows in waves. Both ways. The setup seems intentional, though born of instinct more than design. Later-era documents highlight winter deliveries as perilous affairs. Freshborns met raw, chill, and soggy environs right off. Securing their heat in those initial darks proved vital. Blazes roared on, linen stacked up, watchfulness sharpened. As darkness thickens once more, the young sink into profound rest, yielding to coziness and weariness like no one else. Grown-ups hover on the edge of awareness amid their own respite. Safeguarding never rests. You grasp that thriving in medieval times meant more than braving the freeze alone. It involved crafting surroundings and actions to shelter the frailest. Heat got divvied up with purpose, intent, and tenderness. And, as you slip back toward fitful rest, that tenderness envelops you. The subtle watch, the ongoing tweaks, the silent pact that if the little ones weathered the dark, the toil paid off. Stone pays no mind to your shivers. That's a lesson etched fast in halls meant for devotion, not indulgence. Encasing you are unyielding, hefty barriers, ghostly pale under the blaze, towering beyond any humble home's bounds. They cling to frost like streams to secrets. Once gripped, it lingers. You're within a holy enclave where heat's laws yield to rigor over relief. Here dwell brothers and sisters in faith, face in winter eves with a muted resolve. Flames flicker but frugally. Ease takes no throne, discipline does. Underfoot lies unyielding rock, bare of rushes or litter. Chill rises unchecked from below. Even heavy robes and fleeces can't wholly repel it. It starts at toes and shins, then methodically seizes the frame as quiet drags into hours. Monastic regulations outline the rigid daily routines centered on prayer and labor. Even during the coldest months, monks were required to wake well before sunrise. The nighttime vigils dragged them from their beds into chilly chambers where their exhalations hung visibly in the frigid air. Far from being seen as harsh treatment, this was viewed as an act of piety. You observe how maintaining the right stance helps regulate body heat in such conditions. Kneeling allows for subtle shifts in position. Prolonged standing leads to tingling limbs. Perching on a seat drives the chill deeper into your bones. Motion is limited, yet persistent, enough to circulate blood without disturbing the quiet. A peculiar balance arises between faith and human frailty, embedding itself deeply in your frame. While inner resilience is exalted, bodily boundaries persist. Certain abbeys discreetly relaxed guidelines in severe weather, permitting additional hearths or cozier bedding. In contrast, stricter communities embraced perseverance as integral to their vocation. Scattered missives between monasteries mention grievances like numb hands fumbling with pages, ink solidifying in pots, and frozen mouths during extended recitations. These notes weren't signs of wavering conviction, but recognitions of the ordeal. Beds were basic, slim frames with scant covers, and rarely did anyone huddle together for shared heat, since such intimacy implied other connotations. Isolation was prized. The chill had to be confronted alone despite the communal areas. Still, subtle adaptations crept in. Socks secretly woven for extra layers, cowls tugged down beyond official limits. Robes grew longer with repeated mending over time. Guidelines were in place, yet flesh bartered with them each evening. You perceive how silence magnifies the frost. Absent the bustle of everyday activity, devoid of chatter, the darkness drags on endlessly. Attention turns inward to your respiration, your pulse, the soft rustle of cloth. The freeze heightens your sense of existence. An intriguing note from historical records describes monks slipping books or planks beneath their covers at night. Convinced these items preserved heat. True or merely reassuring, the habit endured in select cloisters. Scholars remain divided on the impact of winter rigors on monastic existence. Some claim it bolstered dedication. Others posit it fostered sickness and abbreviated spans. The annals offer no consensus. You rise once more for vespers, your knees murmuring in protest. The chill weighs more intensely in this void, unmitigated by clustered forms or livestock. Yet there's an element of mastery too. The surroundings are unforgiving but foreseeable. The regimen forges its own refuge. As hours advance, the flagstones stay icy, unaltered. Figures adjust encircling them. Exhales mist, sinews clench, then ease. The ground won't heat the chamber, but it defines the gloom. At length, slumber reclaims you in brief snatches. Repose interrupted by chimes, by worship, by the urge to stir and reclaim sensation in your extremities. The frost lingers eternally, yet integrates into the cadence of faith. As first light filters through slender slits in the walls, you grasp a vital truth. Endurance in the Middle Ages manifested diversely. In certain locales, heat was pooled and distributed. Elsewhere, it was intentionally curbed, born as an aspect of profound intent. Regardless, the winter was confronted squarely, not evaded. And as you gear up for yet another iced dawn, that insight accompanies you, calm and subdued, akin to vapor in the gelid atmosphere. The fortress appears designed to shield against all threats, the chill included. Massive ramparts, soaring spires, earth heaped upon rock with authoritative assurance. But upon entering, as evening descends and the blaze dwindles, you comprehend the indifference of those barriers to coziness. They were erected to bar foes, not to hold in thermal energy. The vastness hits you right away. Vaulted roofs loom overhead, drawing scant warmth aloft to dissipate. Hallways extend endlessly and starkly, serving as conduits for gusts to roam unchecked. Footfalls reverberate, each one underscoring the expanse of vacant space enveloping you. The banqueting chambers prove most severe. Grand in daylight, they exact a toll after dark. One fireplace labors to heat an area built for crowds. The flames seem puny, dwarfed by the expanse. You edge nearer if possible, though much of the space stays frigid. The masonry absorbing energy without yielding it back. Chronicles from aristocratic estates document endless grumbles over indoor winter woes. Nobles mandated draperies not merely for ornament, but to stem air currents and capture heat. Heavy textiles clad the walls, dampening echoes and rendering interiors somewhat tolerable. Absent these, the rock emitted frost without mercy. You run your fingers over one such curtain and sense the contrast at once. Beneath, the surface chills still, but with reduced ferocity. The pocket of air between weave and wall creates a meager shield. It's no luxury, merely a lessening. Bedding setups mirror these constraints. Noble beds dominate with their size, driven not just by extravagance. Stacks of thick bedding rise tall to shield against the chill. When feather mattresses are on hand, they elevate sleepers from the icy ground below. Heavy curtains over canopies form an intimate nook inside the spacious chamber, trapping body heat much like a personal sanctuary. As you enter such a bed alcove, the acoustics shift noticeably. The expansive hall recedes into silence. Your breaths grow more audible, their warmth more confined and intimate. This setup turns the bed into a nested chamber, crafting a tolerable haven amid an unforgiving environment. Yet the chill still infiltrates. After dusk, stone towers lose heat swiftly. Higher levels endure harsher conditions than those down below, battered by gales from all directions. Servants opt for spots near the kitchens or ground floors, where lingering heat from cooking provides some solace. High rank offers no shield from nocturnal discomfort. Household records describe an unconventional remedy. Big dogs were often invited to bedchambers or even onto the bedding in winter, prized more for their body heat than affection. Their company was accepted, sometimes eagerly sought. As temperatures plunged, you grasped the relentless challenge of warming structures built without warmth in mind. In winter, fires blaze nonstop, devouring enormous quantities of wood. Fresh logs arrive each day, while ash piles demand constant clearance. Merely making a castle habitable demands unending effort. Scholars debate today if castles were truly draftier than modest cottages. Some claim their scale amplified the cold. Others note that abundant supplies, firewood, and manpower likely offset the drawbacks. Traversing these corridors by night, you experience both realities simultaneously. Imposing magnificence carries its burdens. Humble abodes escape such trials. Footsteps resound from the hallway ahead. The night patrol passes. Sentries patrol to stir their blood as much as to stand guard. Lingering motionless invites frost to burrow deep. Motion itself turns into a survival tactic. The atmosphere carries distinct scents here, fainter traces of livestock and hearth smoke, stronger hints of rock and moisture. Humidity adheres to the masonry, weighing down the cold further. Blazes offer relief, but only in their immediate glow. When you settle in, cocooned in folds of fabric within drapes crafted to capture fleeting warmth, the subtle paradox sinks in. Medieval fortresses, the era's mightiest edifices, provided scant ease compared to basic dwellings. Security against foes exacted a toll in vulnerability to nature's bite. Dawn arrives regardless. Sunlight filters through slim slits in the walls. Hearths are stoked anew. Daily routines recommence their wary tango with the frost. For now, you recline amid unyielding stone that defends you stoutly, while denying you coziness. Even in winter, the town never fully slumbers. It hushes and contracts as darkness deepens. You navigate tight alleys where structures huddle near, their rooftops nearly brushing. This proximity tempers the winter bite. Gusts find scant space to whip, though wetness persists stubbornly. It coats both masonry and woodwork evenly. Townhouses abut one another, sharing barriers that aid more than anticipated. Warmth from adjacent families bleeds through, blunting the night's severity. You detect it by touching a common partition, not truly heated, yet far kinder than an exterior face open to the elements. Urban clusters forge a tenuous barrier via sheer crowding. The evening's aroma precedes its sounds. Fumes from myriad fireplaces blend with waste, sodden soil, and the bustle of bodies. The atmosphere hangs dense, more oppressive than rural air. Here, the chill doesn't snap so fiercely, but it presses heavier, seeping into fabrics and breaths. Town ledgers detail ongoing attempts to control nighttime flames, particularly in settlements. Excess fires posed risks, scarcity brought suffering. After-hours restrictions curbed wandering not just for discipline, but to prevent heat loss through ajar entrances and gusts invading packed quarters. You spot subtle flickers from casements lining the lane, tiny panels of flame peeking past blinds. Each signifies a family weathering the dark in its compact refuge. Noises propagate oddly in this setting. Calls reverberate for a moment, then dissolve. Boots on iced paths crackle distinctly before trailing off at bends. Within a city home, areas feel squeezed. Chambers shrink in scale. Roofs descend nearer. Such confines assist. Thermal pockets form with less resistance. One blaze accomplishes more in these bounds than in a grand room or fortress suite. You huddle near, shins brushing the fire's base, sensing the heat pool rather than scatter. Where feasible, bunks layer up. Attic nooks cradle resters elevated from the chill gathering at floor level. You ascend a runged frame with caution, each step chilled against your palm, and tuck into a berth, scarcely allowing you to rise fully. It seems confining, yet the atmosphere holds more mildness. Town bylaws highlight an intriguing custom. Evening sentinels had to announce the time allowed, serving not merely to track hours, but to assure that alertness persisted against blazes or unrest. Their calls pierce the frost, reliable and comforting, signaling to those abed that watchfulness endures. You catch the sound of a watchman in the distance, his voice sharp yet fading as it weaves through the labyrinth of stone-lined alleys. There's solace in it somehow. Another soul is shouldering the weight of the darkness. In the grip of urban hardship, winter evenings turn perilous. The shelterless huddle in alcoves beneath stairwells, or any nook that wards off the gusts. Officials might overlook such gatherings during the harshest frosts, knowing the chill claims lives swiftly. Heat turns into an act of compassion as well as control. Within your walls, you rearrange the covers once more, conscious of those dwelling overhead and underneath. Sounds travel easily via timber and plaster. Folks quickly master the art of subtle motions, safeguarding both coziness and slumber for the group. In tight quarters, that mutual accord goes without saying, yet it's vital. Scholars still argue over whether town living boosted chances of enduring winter over solitary country ways. Communal barriers and supplies offered aid, while congestion and illness dragged down. The freeze was merely one element in a web of threats. This evening, you sense that precarious equilibrium firsthand. As darkness thickens, hearth lights wane across the settlement in irregular patterns. Certain families tend their coals with precision. Others allow the blaze to sputter out, relying on coverings and borrowed warmth to last till sunrise. You remain motionless, attuned to the subdued hum of the town. A wagon rumbles afar. A latch clicks gently. The sentry calls out once more, noting hours beyond your sight. The frost bears down, yet the urban sprawl pushes against it, trapping sufficient heat amid its structures to sustain life. And with drowsiness creeping back in brief, soft waves, you grasp how these town nights forge a distinct form of resilience. Not serene as rural quiet, not grand as fortress halls, but intimate, packed, and defiantly vital amid the ice. Beyond the bounds, the evening stretches broader. The rural expanse doesn't enclose you like the streets do. No adjoining partitions lend their glow. No guard's shout pierces the gloom. In the countryside of medieval England, when winter dusk descends, it blankets thoroughly, blanketing meadows and thickets until all seems vulnerably bare. You rest in a dwelling isolated, or all but so. Breezes build momentum over vast spaces before striking your home. They batter the sides harder, sneaking through any flaw they spot. The howl reaches you well before the bite does, a sudden surge over barren terrain, then faint scrapes from limbs or the clatter of shifting roof straw. Separation alters it all. Companions live remote. Aid, should it come, demands trudging through frost and shadow, not a mere holler over a fence. That reality molds how you confront the hours. Preparations grow meticulous. You inspect the blaze doubly. You ensure beasts are secure and near. You bar the entrance as tightly as possible. Indoors, the area shrinks from its daytime scale. Night squeezes it tight. Gloom claims the edges. The flames stand as the sole tether in an ocean of chill. You huddle near it, even as rest nears, reluctant to stray from the heart of heat. The surrounding terrain adds its icy touch. Post-harvest plains bounce back the cold. Soggy soil exhales dampness, letting frost adhere to cloth and flesh. Frost arrives with crispness, yet it heightens the evening's edge. That keenness seeps in via planks and earth floors. Farmsteads depend on creatures more than city homes do, and that bond intensifies after dark. Herds aren't mere neighbors, they're lifelines. Their well-being gets verified ere bedtime, not solely for protection, but for shared body heat. Steady, hushed activity signals reliable warmth unfolding. You tune in to those cues presently. A rustle of form, a soft exhale, feet stamping lightly. Such murmurs bring comfort through the void. Quiet where life should stir sparks unease, even absent peril. The gloom urges vigilance alongside repose. Provisions burden your thoughts more profoundly in this solitude. City bazaars provide options. Here, your hoard is your sole reserve. Each winter vigil underscores this with every tremor. Blazes devour wood fast. Frames expend energy without cease. All that's used this eve must be replenished come morn. You tweak the linens anew, noting the slender buffer. The structure endures but scarcely. Fodder packed in crevices, rags stuffed in cracks, sturdy portals striving. No luxury guides the build. Durability drives it all. One custom stands out as native to remote spots. Folks stir repeatedly through the hours. Not rousing completely, but roused to tend coals, heed livestock, gauge the draft. This fragmented doze isn't fretful, it's guardianship. Awareness can't lapse. Out in the open, the freeze warps the clock uniquely. Lacking chimes or cries to tally time, the period drags infinitely. You gauge it by shifts in chill, by the hearth's waning light, by aches in limbs. Daybreak arrives not heralded by noise, but felt in the flesh. You realize the full weight of self-reliance on the home. No overseer's rush if embers fail. No adjacent folk detect distress till light returns. Survival hits close to home in these moments, urgent and raw. Each choice carries extra weight. As slumber ebbs and flows, your mind wanders to how remoteness intensifies the chill. That identical bite in the air cuts deeper when assistance lies miles off. Your frame doesn't just fend off the frost, it grapples with the surrounding reality. Solitude turns the season's edge keener, yet amid this, a subtle fortitude emerges. The patterns are familiar. Folks enduring such lives grasp their surroundings intimately. They track the gusts sweeping over meadows. They pinpoint where ice forms earliest. They gauge exactly how long coals endure when properly heaped. Your breaths come measured, syncing with the home, the livestock, the terrain beyond. Out there, the landscape stretches iced and immense. Within, a modest haven of heat endures, sustained by routine watchfulness and toil. At last, darkness starts its gradual shift to daybreak. You perceive it prior to any sight, a faint loosening of strain, a hunch that the freeze has hit its limit and can't push further. You stay motionless, hoarding body heat, relying on sheer persistence to suffice. In these remote, shadowed winter evenings, there's no buffer from neighbors or adjoining structures. They're confronted head-on with foresight, forbearance, and the silent certainty that outlasting till sunrise restarts with each dusk. Sickness looms nearer after dark, particularly in the depths of winter. You detect it not as a pinpointed peril, but as a looming chance that swells when the frost drags on. Frames worn from labor grow subdued and sluggish, the boundary between repose and frailty fading. You attend to rattles in the chest with heightened focus. You observe the cadence of inhalations. Slumber isn't mere repose. It's a gauge of the flesh's cohesion. Frigid evenings sap vitality in understated fashions. Limbs rigidify without full rebound. Digits shed their nimbleness. Rib cages constrict. Come dawn, certain individuals haul themselves up more laboriously than prior. This buildup counts. A single tough evening can be borne. A string of them erodes the form. Such wisdom came from watching, not books. They recognized that winter ailments trailed extended freezes. Temperatures spiked following evenings of dying flames or scant rations. Pains starting as mere unease could evolve into graver woes. Heat wasn't indulgence. It warded off harm. You shift your stance once more, aware that total inaction courts peril in the cold. Slight motion circulates the blood. Excess stirs away precious warmth. You strike the equilibrium instinctively. Rest alters under the freeze's sway. It lightens, breaks into pieces. You float off, rouse, tweak, float anew. Profound, seamless repose is scarce on the bitterest evenings. Forms hover half-wakeful, primed for unease or noise. Such rest leaves one wearier, yet sharper to react. Certain herbalists urged longer nights in winter, figuring prolonged downtime preserved thermal and vital reserves. Others cautioned against excess quiet, observing that rigidity fueled ailments. Guidance differed, forged in lived trials over agreement. Now you note the rasp in your gullet, born of hearth-heated atmosphere and faint breaths. A companion nearby stirs and sips, mindful, sparing any spill. Liquids count even when the system doesn't clamor for them. An odd custom surfaces in seasonal tending. Sometimes the ailing were drawn nearer in sleep, body heat shared on purpose. It held hazards, yet the frost posed the bigger threat. Sustaining another's glow could tip the scales from mending to fading. You see how the dwelling adapts to affliction. Flames crackle on a tad longer. Layers of cover multiply. Gaps in walls get sealed tighter. Chores yield to priority. The darkness reshapes around tending. Doubt threads every bit of it. Some bounce back swift after milder spells. Others falter. Identical chill strikes frames variably. Vigor, years, nourishment, and plain fortune all factor in. Patterns were spotted, but results couldn't be steered. Another hack echoes, more profound this round. A hush follows, then even breaths resume. Quiet ease ripples through the space. Watchfulness eases by a sliver. Frigid evenings lay bare frailties, yet they uncover endurance too. Forms acclimate, homes recalibrate, minor tweaks accumulate, extra logs, one more layer, a tighter huddle for rest. These calls happen soundlessly, psalm fanfare. As hours advance, you sense the equilibrium steadying presently. The bite endures, but no ailment progresses. Repose reclaims in brief, bearable bouts. That's sufficient. You grasp that outlasting winter wasn't solely about fending off the immediate freeze. It centered on safeguarding the flesh's knack for rebounding. Evening after evening, heat shielded vitality, vitality fended off disease, and every twilight weathered granted another shot at greeting the light. Darkness stirs reflections that sunlit hours hush. During the cold season, those reflections weigh more intensely, molded by the combined forces of gloom and chill. You sense it at this moment. The mind's quest for significance intensifies. When your form feels uneasy, yet motionless, the frost animates the darkness, and anything animated might seem to be eavesdropping. Folks in those times didn't confront the wintry blackness defenseless. Tales bridged the voids left by doubt. Murmurs of what stirred beyond twilight spread swiftly in a realm devoid of illumination. You huddle nearer to the flames, seeking not just heat, but a sense of security. The blaze repels the encroaching gloom. It's in those dim corners that anxieties collect. Particular noises in the dark hold significance. The abrupt clatter of frost dropping from the roof, a limb rasping against the side, the far-off wail of some creature, each prompts an inquiry that your drowsy thoughts attempt to resolve. Is it ordinary, a signal of danger, or merely insignificant? The bite of the cold hones these uncertainties. You recall the deliberate ways people guarded doorways. Entrances were fastened not merely from drafts, but from any unseen intruders that might slip through. Modest items dangled by the portals, bits of iron, timber etched with basic runes. These weren't grand displays. They were subtle customs performed silently each evening. A persistent notion endures that wintry evenings thin the veil, as if the gap between realms shrinks when the freeze intensifies and the shadows extend endlessly. Literal or figurative, this sensation influenced actions. Folks clustered together. They shunned solitary ventures into the night, unless essential. Heat and protection intertwined. Young ones learned these concepts young. Narratives shared fireside-blended cautions with solace evenly. Remain near, heed the sounds, avoid wandering. Dread had its role, drawing tiny figures toward the glow and vigilant gazes. You observe how grown-ups alter their movements under cover of dark. Footfalls grow cautious, tones soften, chuckles fade. The evening requires reverence, not alarm, but vigilance. Routine offers solace in such times. The familiar invocations, the repeated motions, the blaze maintained identically. Such patterns calm the spirit amid physical strain. Foreseeing the sequence eases the grip of the frost. On certain evenings, individuals thought visions brought tidings honed by the season. Slumber interrupted by chill seemed sharper. Visions clung more persistently. Come dawn, they discussed these visions, assessing their import alongside the winter that forged them. Doubt weaves subtly through every aspect. Not all shared identical convictions. Some scoffed at the lore as silly. Others embraced it tightly. The dark provided space for diverse views. The frost paid no mind to your convictions, yet they determined your approach. You draw your covering snugger, not for significant heat, but for the reassuring act, a minor shield against the void. Customs don't always resolve issues. At times, they merely render them tolerable. As time advances, the thoughts quiet once more. Fancy eases. Known noises reemerge. The dwelling creaks. The hearth murmurs faintly. Beasts stir and exhale. No hidden presence reveals itself. You ease back into slumber, soothed not by assurance, but by the lack of disturbance. Wintry evenings bore apprehension, yet they also bore narratives that aided endurance, proximity, and preservation of heat until daybreak. Within that subtle equilibrium of fancy and perseverance, you repose anew, permitting the dark to unfold without excessive probing. Certain individuals forgo rest entirely through those frostbitten nights. As the hours elongate, you grow conscious of them, those whose duties commence as others yield to sleep. The chill grants no reprieve. It merely integrates into their tasks. Picture a sentinel treading warily down a shadowed lane or yard. Vapor trails each breath. Idling invites peril. The cold would seep into bones swiftly. Thus they pace, halt, attend, then resume. Motion generates heat. Inactivity beckons mishap. In settlements, these nocturnal guardians fulfill multiple roles. They guard against blazes, as terrifying in the freeze as the weather itself. They strain for hints of burglary or disorder. They track the passage of time in a land scarce of visible timepieces. Their announcements pierce the blackness, rhythmic and firm, informing the reposeful that vigilance persists. In rural expanses, the duty shifts form. A tiller might awaken to inspect the herd, particularly in severe frosts. Troughs glaze solid. Beasts might fret if the cold nips fiercely. A hushed check amid the night averts calamity by morn. You perceive the contrast between voluntary alertness and compelled watchfulness. These souls ready themselves. Additional wrappings. Hearty sustenance reserved for the late vigil. A spot by the flames both prior and post rounds. Their evenings fracture by intent, not aversion. Domestic patterns mirror this truth. One member grasps how to stoke the hearth in a daze. Another attends amid repose. Frosty nights compel collective duty, distributed among the alert and the slumbering. In certain villages, an intriguing custom emerges. Watchmen used basic noisemakers like rattles or staffs, not just to announce their rounds, but also to circulate blood in their chilled fingers. Noise turned into a source of warmth by prompting activity. You observe the gentle way those rousing others during the night go about it. A soft tap, a hushed tone. Haste drains precious heat, while composure holds it steady. In the biting cold that hones every gesture, even urgent situations are handled with measured care. This leads to sleep breaking into shorter stretches in winter, following the household's pulse. You doze off. You stir awake for a moment. You settle back down. Such interruptions aren't viewed as shortcomings. They're simply adjustments. The darkness stretches on, too frigid and endless to tackle in one unbroken go. Historical accounts indicate folks anticipated this fragmented repose and built their evenings around it. Evening devotions, subdued tasks, fire inspections. The chill molded the hours as surely as daylight did. You reflect on how alien this is compared to today's insulated, hushed evenings. In this era, vigilance never truly lapses. There's always an ear attuned, a body in motion, an eye alert for shifts. As you ease toward slumber once more, that constant watchfulness brings reassurance, not from any looming peril, but from the frost's insistence on alertness. The hours pass as a group effort, blending alertness and downtime into a single fabric. And as you nod off anew, cocooned in coverings and communal heat, companions patrol the shadows, safeguarding winter's delicate equilibrium until dawn breaks. Harsh nights spark resourcefulness. When standard setups falter, when flames dip too low, or covers seem inadequate, you improvise with anything at hand, no matter its original purpose. Staying alive fosters innovation, particularly to avoid endless tremors through the dark. These hacks surface in casual tales, not boasted in texts, but etched in memory for their reliability. Stones warmed by the fire, bundled in fabric, positioned by toes or along the spine. Their glow endures past the dying embers, seeping gradually into the gloom. Caution is key. Overly scorching, and it scorches flesh or cloth. Too tepid, and it's useless. Trial and error reveals the sweet spot. When wood grows scarce, another makeshift fix emerges. Folks heap additional ash atop the coals, building a denser barrier to trap the heat. The blaze seems extinguished, yet coziness simmers underneath. It might chill the space initially, but the payoff comes in simpler restarts and fingers that don't ache as fiercely. You reposition your spot deliberately this time. Hay gets rearranged to seal gaps from gusts. Coverings are stacked neatly instead of flung out. A bunched-up garment beneath the chest softens the ground's chill. Minor tweaks, yet they accumulate into real relief. One custom might startle those from later times. Certain individuals bedded down with planks or implements slid under the sheets, convinced that firm items aided in holding heat. The reasoning didn't hold up, but the ritual endured, perhaps because the added pressure hugged the coverings tighter, fostering a sense of security. In desperate freezes, even water turns helpful, gently heated and sealed in a vessel positioned close to your sleeping area. It dispels its mild warmth over time. The leak hazard limits its use, yet in dire straits, calculated gambles prevail. Each choice gets balanced against the looming hours. You see how these techniques pass along subtly. A family picks up a handy tip. It's shared with a nearby home. The notion evolves a bit with each retelling. No expert decrees its value. The season itself judges. Not all approaches succeed. A few squander time. Others provide solace on true heat. Still, even flawed ones count. They instill control, the conviction that the gloom can be molded, not just weathered. You sense the shift when one clicks. Frost's hold eases a touch. Tension unwinds. Breaths grow fuller. Repose arrives smoother. That triumph sticks, guiding the following evening. Lying here now, aided by a couple of these modest fixes, you grasp how life back then wasn't fixed or unyielding. It bent, tested ideas, adapted on the fly. They didn't hold out for flawless fixes. They drew on swift lessons and refined as needed. Beyond the walls, the freeze stays relentless. Within, clever minds eke out sufficient ease for true rest. And as drowsiness reclaims you, bolstered by a toasty rock, an added fold, or a smart shift, you slip away, thankful for the understated ingenuity that let folks weather the worst vigils. The freeze proves deadliest without any refuge to counter it. You feel that edge now, how the evening turns merciless beyond the village bounds, where barriers weaken and heat shifts from communal to solitary. For anyone lacking a steady roof, those nights aren't mere nuisances. They're recurring hazards at dusk. You picture someone huddled in an alcove, spine to the timber, legs pulled close, pavement below, gales overhead. The form curls in on itself, serving as a makeshift haven to trap whatever scant body heat it generates. Each motion is deliberate and sparing. Tremors are permitted just for a moment or two, prolonged too long, and fatigue sets in swiftly. Local laws occasionally allude to this harsh truth without spelling it out plainly. Regulations emerge concerning permitted sleeping spots, times for shutting gates, and permissions for keeping flames alive. During the fiercest frosts, officials often ease up on these strictures. Folks grasped the peril of the elements, even if spoken words were scarce, knowing that the chill could claim lives in mere hours. You sense the stark shift in how the frost bites when no fireplace glows close at hand. There's no central source of heat to circle around, no anchor for comfort. Warmth seeps away steadily from every part, without mercy. Garments offer what protection they can, yet absent true repose or communal coziness, they fall short every time. Certain individuals seek out closeness for relief. Bedding down by bakeries where the day's oven embers linger with residual glow. They cluster against sun-warmed stones long past dusk. They slip into spots housing livestock, lured by the identical pull of heat that beckons them. Such decisions unfold in silence, typically under cover of night, steered by an intimate feel for the settlement's daily pulses. In winter chronicles, a subtle act of benevolence surfaces now and then. Residents might let coals smolder beyond necessity, or nudge a door ajar to release a trace of indoor heat, sufficient to soothe the outer gloom without courting risks, just a whisper of aid for those beyond the threshold. In the grip of winter, compassion was doled out with caution. Yet it persisted. You perceive how the freeze reshapes the essence of giving. A scrap of loaf holds little value compared to a wind-free nook. A lone coverlet outweighs any sum of money. Heat emerges as the ultimate gift one soul can extend to another. Sickness spreads with alarming speed amid such trials. Frames already sapped by famine and the raw elements struggle to rebound. Rasps grow harsher, joints lock up, slumber turns fitful and perilous. The boundary between replenishing downtime and utter breakdown blurs easily. Certain refugees persist, linked to monasteries or almshouses, providing packed sleeping mats and scant blazes. These spots buzz with clamor, discomfort, and simmering friction. Yet they stave off death. Heat circulates among the throng, watched over warily and bartered for through the hours of darkness. You carry the burden of these evenings in a new light. Here, the icy grip isn't tamed, it's defied. Making it through hinges on stamina, fortune, and the readiness of strangers to flex the codes when the gales grow vicious. Even in your humble haven, however plain, its gifts sharpen into focus. Barriers against the world count. A steady flame counts. Fellowship counts. The darkness imparts thankfulness by way of opposition. As drowsiness reclaims you, that insight lingers soft and unspoken. Not every soul confronted the medieval winter on level ground. A few weathered it through foresight and habit. Others met its fury bare, vulnerable to each gust and drop in the mercury. The frost shows no favoritism, though humanity does. And as the hours drag into the void, you grasp that enduring wasn't solely about inner fortitude. It rested on the delicate web of pity, forbearance, and collective heat that bound villages fast until dawn. Heat doesn't materialize from nothing. It's crafted, sustained, and mended in hushed ways, largely by those whose toil goes unthanked. You register this in the hush of the night's core. Another soul has already stirred to seal a gap against the breeze. Yet another has tucked a cover closer around a young one, all without rousing them. These deeds proclaim nothing. They just occur, Vast portions of the labor that renders a winter evening bearable unfold well before eyelids droop, and a great deal of it devolves upon women. You spot the outcomes all around. Linens washed and stacked come morning, attire patched to bar the seep of frost through rents, meals readied to yield lingering comfort deep into the evening. By twilight, these labors vanish from view, but the vigil relies on them utterly. You trace the hem of a coverlet with your fingertips, sensing the men's rough but reliable weave. This cloth bears tales. It's been reworked countless times, never for show, always for purpose. A frayed border courts invasion by chill. A worn patch siphons away precious heat. An observant hand caught it and set it right ages ago, long prior to your settling in. In no season does the craft of yarn and loom hold greater sway than in the depths of winter. Wool springs from no whim. It's scoured, twisted, threaded, and formed across endless stretches of time, frequently in chilled chambers, with numb and aching digits. The solace enveloping you carries echoes of that prior ache. You ponder the steady cadence of such labors, twisting fibers beside the hearth as light wanes, sewing under dim lamps, bundling rushes, draping weaves to cure free of full smoke taint. Every choice molds the texture of the coming dark. The young absorb these patterns young. Daughters in particular master gauging cloth by feel, stacking coverings with thrift, spotting air leaks ere they worsen. This wisdom stays unwritten. It seeps in via endless practice. The frieze honors readiness. A home where garb is stitched sound, pallets are built thick, and sustenance is plotted with care, faces the long nights on surer footing than one that skimps on such trifles. The contrast isn't striking, yet it persists steadily. Even in this moment, you observe those minor tweaks persisting. A hand extends to straighten the displaced coverlet. Another person tunes into the atmosphere, detects a chill, and nudges a bench to seal off the breeze seeping through the entrance. Such gestures remain subdued, nearly instinctive. They foster a keen vigilance born from these routines. Heat proves tenuous. Let it slip your mind briefly, and the evening turns more unforgiving. Those skilled at safeguarding it develop foresight, spotting rhythms, foreseeing frost instead of merely countering it. This toil extends beyond lights out. One person stirs before the rest to nurture the glowing coals. Another inspects the young ones prior to daybreak. Darkness isn't an interlude. It's merely a subdued stage of labor, paced more deliberately, yet equally vital. A wordless appreciation seeps into you. The coziness enveloping you presently stems from no chance occurrence. It emerges from prolonged toil across hours, days, entire cycles of seasons. Livestock nurtured, fibers woven into yarn, fabrics patched, provisions cached. Everything aligns to yield this instance of modest ease. As slumber reclaims you, it dawns that enduring the Middle Ages hinged equally on nurturing as on sheer tenacity. Might counted, cleverness counted, but so did forbearance, vigilance, and the resolve to perform modest duties without cease. The chill bears down relentlessly, yet it encounters opposition in each fold, each seam, each understated choice from prior times. Enveloped by that invisible toil, you doze once more, cradled by efforts expended with care, eased softly into obscurity. Winter evenings elongate, and your form adapts to this reality through shifts so subtle they evade detection. Repose no longer forms a single unbroken span. Rather, it arrives in surges. you submerge, you emerge, you submerge anew. This cadence seems innate in this place, molded by shadows that endure well past the flesh's anticipation. You rouse momentarily, unalarmed, merely attentive. The hearth persists, though faintly. The space seems chillier than earlier, or perhaps your senses have sharpened to it. You reposition, draw material nearer, then settle motionless. Such arousals aren't shortcomings. They're woven into the cycle. Folks in medieval England anticipated no uninterrupted slumber through the dark, particularly amid frost. Extended gloom prompted interludes. Certain individuals devoted these intervals to silent devotion. Others tended the blaze, monitored beasts, or exchanged hushed remarks prior to reclining anew. The evening wasn't a barrier to flee. It was a terrain to traverse incrementally. You perceive how your reflections alter in these gaps. They proceed languidly, devoid of haste. Existence seems remote, concerns muted by frost and weariness. Practical concerns dominate initially. Are all blanketed? Is the portal secure? Does the blaze endure? With those resolved, the psyche eases. These vigilant spells are fleeting, yet significant. They enable the form to adapt to evolving circumstances. Should the blaze wane excessively, it's detected. If a youngster moves and exposes a limb, a hand extends to remedy it. Unbroken rest would complicate such corrections. The frost itself appears to prompt these risings as heat wanes. Vigilance heightens. As temperature rises anew, even marginally, repose ensues. Flesh and surroundings engage in a subdued dialogue throughout the vigil. You detect stirrings from another similarly roused. A gentle hack, a rustle of bedding, silence reigns. No utterances break it. Mutual ordeal suffices to occupy the quiet. Reassurance lies in recognizing this cadence as commonplace. No unease arises from alertness amid shadows. The evening endures. Ample span exists for renewal to ebb and flow. Daybreak doesn't burst forth. It inches nearer. You recline deeper now. Upon rousing afresh, the shift registers. Frost has crested and started to yield faintly. The atmosphere bites less keenly. The hearth nears extinction, yet the nadir has receded. With first light nearing, slumber intensifies. The form perceives approaching brightness prior to its arrival. Tendons ease. Respiration slows profoundly. The fractured evening nears closure. It becomes clear that medieval repose was molded by surroundings over custom. Frosty evenings condition forms to recharge fragmentarily, to stay alert, to distribute duties even amid drowsy haze. Enshrouded in coverings, encircled by faint pulses of vitality, you yield to this concluding repose. The evening has exerted its influence. Daybreak advances languidly and wanly, and you stand prepared to greet it. Certain winters defy predictability. You glean this from the hushed tones and tales of particular eras, as though voicing them could summon recurrence. Frost was routine. Tribulation was commonplace, but occasionally a season emerged that taxed resolve severely and etched recollections vividly. You remain wakeful, pondering those epochs relayed via anecdotes over calendars. Evenings where blazes raged without cease, yet left chambers frigid. Dawns where liquid solidified within shelters. Periods where earth remained unyielding. Labor curtailed not by preference but compulsion. Those harsh winters lingered in memory, refusing to fade quietly. They carved themselves out as something distinct. The chill in those times burrowed further into bones. Creatures bore the brunt initially. Yields of milk fell away. Beasts grew frail. As the animals faltered, humans weren't far behind. Keeping heat alive grew tougher, with all the usual supports buckling under pressure simultaneously. Picture those evenings drawing out like this one. Extra coverings piled on, but always falling short. Fuel consumed at a quicker pace. Stores vanishing sooner than anticipated. Rest grew brief. Hours of consciousness stretched on. Frost invaded spots it typically overlooked. Folks recalled those seasons vividly since they reshaped daily habits for years afterward. Reserves of wood or peat hoarded come the next cycle. Bundles of hay positioned nearer to beds. Entrances shored up stronger. Thatched covers mended with extra diligence. Recollection turned into foresight. Tales passed down held cautions. Seniors recounted evenings where exhalations iced over covers, even huddled bodies offering scant solace. Such narratives aim to teach, not terrify. Frost could always intensify. Being prepared counted most. In those brutal stretches, daily patterns warped. Blazes roared on beyond the norm, hazards be damned, stock herded nearer to human quarters than custom allowed, provisions saved for leaner times dipped into prematurely. Staying alive required adaptability. Tonight's bite outdoors seems tame in hindsight. Sharp, no doubt, insistent, absolutely, yet far from ruinous. That line draws the vital boundary. Folks gauge the season not solely by the mercury's dips, but by whether their lifelines hold steady. No lone chronicle sums up those eras completely. A village might languish as its neighbor scrapes by. A family persists where another crumbles. Deliveries of charcoal varied, and so did the hardships. What held true across it all was the human reply. Groups pulled tighter together. Aid flowed without much asking. Norms eased up. The freeze challenged flesh and ties alike. Envision yourself stretched out here in one of those tempests, ear tuned to the hearth's faltering crackle, sensing the chill bear down fiercer than routine. Dread would hover, yet resolve matched it. Such darkness extracted every lesson in grit folks had gathered. Reclining here presently, you grasp how life back then hinged less on routine dusks than these standout ordeals. They honed skills. They etched routines deeper. They underscored that heat was no sure thing. This evening's hush strikes softer against that backdrop. The frost nudges but fails to engulf. Such awareness delivers its quiet reassurance. You draw breath evenly, relying on the shelter's rhythms, confident this chill will slip away unmarked among the legends. As hours deepen, minor mercies gain weight. Not the sort that erase the bite entirely. Nothing truly does. But those that blunt it slightly, easing the holdout. You pick them out gradually, senses dulled, yet keen in tandem. Consider the coverlet tucked neatly at your toes, layered thick where chill loves to pool. Another's quiet forethought from before, aware that extremities chill quickest. Or the bench by the threshold, tilted precisely to block the low-slung gusts. It passes for chance. It's deliberate. Ears catch the subtle stir of coals easing, no fresh logs tossed on, just warmth ebbing into cinders. That murmur confirms the blaze endures. Feeble perhaps, but there. It loosens your frame a touch, unwinding strain you hadn't clocked. Scent offers solace as well. Wisps of timber, fleeces, milled cereals. Unlovely by today's tastes, yet known quantities. Recognition alone kindles a thaw. It whispers all's in order. The dwelling performs as it should. A companion's deep slumber sigh drifts over, a drawn-out release hinting at security. Your lungs sink to it without bidding, body latching onto a pulse more solid than solo. Fingers trace known surfaces, gnarled timber smoothed by generations, linens softened through wear, bedding compressed even by routine. Contact roots you here and now, reining in thoughts from straying into gloom. Frost stirs the spirit uneasy, feel steadies it. Routine harbors ease too, recurring noises night after night, tiny tweaks in the same spots, anticipating pressure points and fortifying them ahead. Foreseeability crafts its own refuge. Glow contributes, even dimly. The ember's muted orb peeks through soot, just sufficient to mute the gloom. Pitch black weighs heavier, somehow more oppressive. A trace of radiance lends the space a lived-in feel, contained. You see now how much of this stems from instinct, not deliberation. Customs built across endless dusks, palms groping habitually to fixed points, folds set identically every time, a beat always held to a tune before drifting off anew. Such trifles seldom grace ledgers or lore. They're too everyday, yet these routines distinguish frenzy from fortitude, ceaseless tremors from tolerable chill. Slumber creeps back more softly now. Your form has acclimated. The bite of frost has ebbed. Those subtle aids have performed their subtle task. You recline here, not from any heat, but from the steadiness of your surroundings. No urgency demands action. The darkness may unfold undisturbed. Within this interval of unease and repose, you grasp how endurance in the Middle Ages arose from such instances. Not grand triumphs against the freeze, but myriad minor decisions rendering the hours endurable. Enveloped in those decisions, you surrender to drowsiness once more, permitting the gloom to guide you to daybreak. Comfort by quiet comfort. At this point, the hours blur beyond counting. Perception dilutes time, the chill softening, limbs unwinding, respiration steadying. The concern shifts from your warmth to sustaining this state until dawn breaks. Perseverance emerges as the subdued aim. You sense it through your frame's adaptation. Tremors cease not from incoming heat, but from an inner poise achieved. Warmth offset by what escapes, equilibrium barely maintained. This condition seems tenuous, yet endures. Those who face such evenings knew ease was no entitlement. Ease implied indulgence, slack, surplus. The season called for different qualities: tolerance, forbearance, the skill to dwell motionless amid unease without yielding to agony. You reflect on the scarcity of grievances voiced here, not from innate resilience, but because outcry alters naught. Effort proves wiser in tweaking coverings, sealing gaps, or drawing measured breaths. Utterances await the sun. The shelter contracts in your mind, not truly diminishing, but your focus contracting. Hearth forms barriers. All else dissolves. Such concentration preserves vitality much like fleece or masonry. Honor lies in this steadfastness, not bold, not valiant, merely reliable. The capacity to confront the evening on its terms and abide within it. Folks gauged triumph by sunrises attained, not glooms subdued. You observe how the prospect of first light alters the chill's weight. Awareness of its conclusion lightens the burden. Even prior to its arrival, your physique detects the pivot. The nadir of frost has waned. The atmosphere stirs faintly. Tension eases. Recollection aids as well. Evenings of this sort have been weathered previously. They shall recur. That certainty embeds itself soundlessly, offering resolve without fervor. As doze waxes and wanes in its last wisps, You settle into this insight. The obscurity has challenged you. You have met it. Sufficiency resides there. Beyond the walls, the realm lies hushed. Within your delicate web of heat, operations persist. Flames flicker faintly. Beasts stay serene. Inhabitants doze fitfully. And as daybreak's fringe nears, you perceive that persisting through hardship never meant banishing unease. It meant mastering a serene, enduring coexistence with it until alteration came unbidden. You detect daylight prior to its sight. Frost alters temperament foremost. It yields, not precisely thawing, but relenting its hold as though exhausted by its own force. Your physique registers the alteration at once. Sinews slacken. Inhalation grows fuller. The seeming eternity of night now bounds itself. Illumination emerges gradually, not beams of sun, merely a dilution of shadow. Contours mellow, outlines haze. A figure nearby rouses softly, mindful not to disturb the rest too soon. The blaze dwindles near extinction, yet it fulfilled its duty. It bore you onward. You shift a touch, probing extremities. Rigid, yet they heed. Frost lingers but yields supremacy. Each dawn arrives as validation that the approaches succeeded, that readiness, forbearance, and endless fine-tunings summed to persistence. Again, dwellers ascend unhurriedly. No hasty gestures. The frame requires moments to rouse from frost. Extension unfolds deliberately. Limbs protest briefly, then yield. One sweeps residue away and exhales tenderly over remnants, summoning a dim spark anew. Daylight, too, shall require fire. Beyond, the landscape alters. Ice gleams in rays. Exhaled vapor disperses swifter. The peril of night recedes to reminiscence, swiftly supplanted by duties pending. Liquid to draw, livestock to nourish, hearths to renew. The frost halts for no respite. You comprehend now the way shadowed hours molded luminous ones, weariness borne ahead, sore frames toiled regardless, heat reconstructed at each sunrise, aware of its evening depletion, existence looped eternally, unresolved, subtle contentment dwells in this cycle. You endured. That suffices. No revelry marks it, only progression. The frost exacts steadiness beyond bravery. With light intensifying, the abode yields a fraction. Entrances part, vapor disperses. Chill withdraws to the margins, if only briefly. Daytime approaches replace the night's careful plans. You pull your thoughts away from the hearth, the coverings, the cozy huddle of heat, holding on to what you've learned. Survival through the ages wasn't reliant on one clever method. It hinged on vigilance, perception, and readiness to adjust repeatedly. With the medieval dawn fully enveloping you, a sense of thankfulness emerges, not for ease, but for perseverance. The darkness has lifted. The chill will creep back. Yet you've grasped precisely how folks confronted it, enduring one extended winter evening after another. Ease off now. The rhythm eases further. There's no call to cling to the night's shadows in your thoughts. Allow them to fade, the flames dimming, the frost easing into recollection. Envision the space shedding its strain, the strain lifting from your neck, fingers, lungs. You might see the ice thawing gradually as the sun's rays intensify, unhurried, without pressure, simply a soft shift, the sort that unfolds regardless of your gaze, the variety you can rely on. Consider those countless evenings over generations, born in silence, free of fuss or protest. Individuals sleeping as conditions allowed, rousing when required, passing body heat, occupying shared areas. dividing the enduring task of weathering the season. You're free to unwind now without straining to hear crackling coals or whispering air currents. No entrances to barricade, no blaze to nurture, just the even leisurely cadence of inhalation, secure and leisurely. Permit the visions to blur. Rough stone fades at the edges. Bedding dims. Wisps of haze rise. Twilight recedes into a serene remote memory, ceasing its pull on your focus. Remain immersed in this sense of peaceful resolution. No further action is required. No issues remain to address. Dawn has arrived for you.